Welcome, everybody. So glad to be here with all of you. It's going to be a great show tonight. It is going to be good. I'm feeling it. I am feeling it. I hope you are feeling it as well. It is going to be awesome tonight. Hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications bell, and let's do it.
Spoken of the American century. I say that the century on which we are entering can be and must be the century of the common man.
A radical redistribution of economic power.
I mean, we know that racism is just a byproduct of capitalism. Everything would be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people.
We need a government that will make sure Americans are taken care of and organize the economy to serve the people, not the profits of a wealthy few.
We now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty.
We got to start getting out there with the people.
Get out of the movement and get to the masses.
We need a government of action.
All right, everybody. Hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the notifications bell so you get notifications. Make sure that you're subscribed. The algorithm unsubscribes people against their own wishes, so make sure that you're subscribed. You don't want to be one of those who gets unsubscribed against their will. The way we do things on this show is that I give my opening remarks. Those are just my thoughts about what I want to talk about. Sometimes we talk about news. Sometimes we talk about other things. I give my opening remarks, and then we do a roll call, and then I answer super chat questions for the rest of the night. So if you have something you'd like me to talk about in the second half of the program, by all means, send a super chat. I will write it down, and we'll get to it in the second half. I do my best to always give an answer to all of the questions that people ask. However, the answer may not be the one that you are looking for. Sometimes when people ask about something so obscure and so esoteric, I have to give an answer of, I don't know, or I'll have to do more research on that. Other times, I will know a lot about a topic and I'll just hit it right on the head and just give you an answer. Sometimes I will have a little bit to say about a topic, but that topic will remind me of something else that is very important that needs to be said. And so by asking that question, you get an answer, but then you also get something more than that. You get me using your question to get into something very important. So that's the beauty of these kinds of live streams, is it's a wide-ranging, interactive conversation. I get to be me. My personality comes across. I get to engage with all of you. We bounce off of each other. The way you all ask questions and the kind of things you say in the chat strike me, and I bounce back at you. And you hear me, you hear my words, you hear the stories I'm telling, you hear the comments I'm making, you see the emotions that I'm putting out there, and you bounce back at me. And we play off of each other. These lives would not be the same if I was just sitting here alone talking at my webcam. It is the interaction that makes it so special, what we do here. And that's why I love to do it. I really do love doing this. That's why I do it so much. I missed you so much during the time when I wasn't doing these live streams, the 2-month break we took. I missed all of you so much because it is so refreshing to interact with all of you. So refreshing to have that back and forth. I try to stare into the camera as much as I can, but I'm always looking down at the chat because that's where the comments from all of you are. And as much as I try to stare into that camera constantly, give you the eye contact you all deserve, I keep looking down at the chat because that's where you all are, and that's where I can see your comments. Now, it's good that I don't have to like completely turn, right? I've got the computer here I've got the camera right up there, so it's not too much of a look away, but it's a look away. But I'm really, really glad to be back with all of you. So if you have something you want me to talk about in the second half of the program, shoot me a super chat. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications bell. Just a quick announcement, 2 quick announcements. First one being we are on Patreon. If you want to support the work that we do, the work that this community does, you can become a patron. Within the next 5 days, we will be having a stream for patrons only. And those streams are very intimate. I'm a much more upfront and frank. I just kind of answer people's questions for a good hour. No plan, no script, no preparation. I just engage with my audience for a good hour. Just an hour-long conversation. So if you want to be included in the patrons only stream that's coming up within the next 5 days, by all means, just sign up on the Patreon. Always good to do that. The other quick announcement that needs to be made is that the Center for Political Innovation is back. We are having weekly national Zoom call membership meetings. So if you wish to be invited to our weekly national meeting, you can, of course, just sign up on the website. If you become a dues-paying member of the CPI, you can, at that point, be invited to our general membership meetings, and you will know what our plans are. We have some very, very big plans right now. Our plans actually took an interesting turn this week. There is a project, an issue really, that I've wanted to do work on for quite some time. And it appears that some of the ideas that were just in my mind, it appears that some of those ideas may be coming into reality. And that is really exciting. And I'm not going to share it with you all on here, but if you are a member of CPI and you are somebody who will be expected to help carry out these proposals as someone who is an activist, why, you'll hear about them on Saturday, and you'll be part of bringing these important ideas into being. So I just wanted to start out the stream with those 2 business announcements about the Patreon and about CPI membership once again being open. And so I guess I just get now into the opening remarks. I wanted to begin by making a few things clear. As someone who calls myself a communist, as someone who calls myself a 21st century socialist, and as someone who sees themselves as continuing the great tradition of Karl Marx and Frederick Engels, Vladimir Lenin, Mao Zedong, Kim Il-sung, Fidel Castro, the great tradition of Hugo Chavez, the great tradition of socialism in its many forms that we've seen, the great tradition of Daniel Ortega and Nicolas Maduro, the great tradition of Kim Jong-un, the great tradition of Mao Zedong and Deng Xiaoping and Xi Jinping, the tradition of Che Guevara, the tradition of Ho Chi Minh, the tradition that has existed here on these shores, from Nat Turner to John Brown to Harriet Tubman to Thaddeus Stevens to the abolitionists who fought against slavery, to the suffragists who fought for the rights of women to vote, to those who built the labor movement, the Wobblies, the IWW, Eugene Debs, Mother Bloor, Elizabeth Gurley Flynn, Claudia Jones, to those who built the once beautiful and amazing Communist Party of the United States, William Z. Foster, Gus Hall, Moishe Olgan, Henry Winston, William L. Patterson, to the tradition of the Black Panthers, Huey Newton, Angela Davis, Bobby Seale, to those who organized all throughout U.S. history, fighting for the rights of the downtrodden, fighting for the oppressed, fighting against the unjust wars, fighting for food for hungry children. As someone who sees myself coming from this great tradition of struggle, someone who looks back at giants in the past, there are certain things that I do believe. There are certain things that I profess. There are certain truths that I espouse. And the beliefs, more or less, go like this. I do believe that there is something unique about the human species. That while animals simply interact with their environment, as Frederick Engels taught us, human beings make the environment to serve them. Humans are endowed with certain intelligence, certain ability, certain creative power. As the tool-making species, we have the ability to do things that other species cannot do, and to constantly reinvent our relationship with nature in order to reach a higher plane of existence. That ants have been making their ant farms the same way for millions of years. And beavers have been building their beaver dams the same way for millions of years. But in just 8,000 years, human beings have gone from hunter-gatherers in the woods to space travel and iPhones and 3D printers and artificial intelligence, and that there is something unique about humankind. That we have the ability to reinvent ourselves as a species. We have the ability to constantly perfect our state of existence, to do greater than we have done before, to expand our life expectancy, to expand our population, to expand our comfort in life, to connect to higher powers, to understand the objective laws of the universe and history, that human beings are not simply rats in a maze or a science experiment capable only of fleeing from pain and seeking pleasure, but human beings are capable of comprehending the big picture, of asking the big questions, of thinking in a scientific and calculated way, and of moving toward a higher plane of understanding, a higher mode of production, and a higher mode of existence. That there is something unique about humanity. There is something unique about humanity. And that it is this creative drive that propelled human beings from hunter-gatherer civilization to slavery and feudalism, to modern-day capitalism, and that starting in 1917, countries that were kept chronically poor and underdeveloped by capitalism in its last monopoly stage of imperialism, began to break their chains. And though they were poor, in breaking their chains and breaking out of the domination of Western capitalism and imperialism, they began to lay the foundations of a higher plane of existence, socialism. A society where the banks and the factories and the major industries and the centers of economic power do not simply function as private entities operating for the profits of those who own them, but rather they function for the good of society, and that the chaos of the market, the anarchy of production can be overcome, and that with the application of human reason and science and morality to the control of the means of production, to the control of the commanding heights of economic power, human creativity and human brilliance can soar to an even higher plane. And that this understanding that was first put forward by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels was validated by the Russian Revolution. And it was further validated when the Soviet Union went from being one of the poorest countries in the world to becoming a superpower, and defeating the Nazis, and inventing space travel, and electrifying the entire country, and wiping out illiteracy, and building the biggest steel mills and the biggest power plants in the world. And while the rest of the planet was having a Great Depression, the whole world looked on at what the Soviet Union was achieving, and that was validation that a higher plane beyond capitalism can be achieved, and that the countries that have been kept in chronic poverty by breaking their chains and adopting the socialist mode of production have lifted themselves up. China today stands as one of the greatest examples of this. The former sick man of Asia, now a towering center of the global economy. 800 million people lifted out of poverty. But the achievements of socialism were seen on the African continent with Julius Nyerere and African socialism in Tanzania, with Kwame Nkrumah and African socialism in Ghana, with the Islamic socialist government of Libya that provided the highest life expectancy on the African continent, that built the world's largest hydroelectrical power plant, that provided jobs to millions of Africans who came to Libya from all over the continent to enjoy the fruits of the socialized oil production apparatus. The achievements of socialism have been proved in Cuba, where a population that faces a horrendous blockade still has a higher life expectancy than the people of Haiti, than the people of Jamaica, and the people of the surrounding Caribbean nations. A healthcare system that is admired all over the world. A literacy volunteer program that brings literacy to people all across the planet. The fruits of socialism have been shown in Nicaragua, where the Sandinista government, on the slogan of Christianity, socialism, and solidarity, have raised millions of people from poverty, have concocted a micro-entrepreneurship program that has enabled millions of people to start their own businesses in coordination with the overall state central plan and raise themselves up and become prosperous. That socialism is the inevitable next stage of human development. That as the productive forces continue to advance under capitalism, the problem of poverty amid plenty persists. The problem that exhibits itself with the fact that self-driving cars would lead to mass unemployment, hunger, and desperation in the United States, when in a rational society, self-driving cars would be nothing but a great achievement, nothing but something to celebrate. A system where people's only value is their ability to sell their labor power to a capitalist. A system where war is profitable, where drugs and drug addiction is profitable. A system where prisons are profitable. A system where debt and the crippling of an economy is profitable for a small class of bankers. This system must be overcome. And that we can learn from the failure and the problems of the Soviet Union. We can learn from the problems that China has experienced over the years. That 21st century socialism corrects the errors and the problems of the 20th century to move higher to yet another plane. That 21st century socialism does not reject religion, does not deny the existence of God, does not seek to break away people from their spiritual communities. 21st century socialism is not afraid to utilize the strengths of the market to stabilize and boost an overall socialist plan of production. 21st century socialism is not held back by the ideological dogmatism of the past. 21st century socialism provides the many necessary adjustments. And finally, just as socialism in China was different than socialism in Russia, just as socialism in Cuba was different than socialism in China, just as socialism in Venezuela was different than socialism in Cuba, just as socialism in Libya was different than socialism in Nicaragua, and that socialism everywhere is unique and carries with it the unique characteristics of the country in which it originated. And that when we have socialism in the United States, it will not be Korean socialism. It will not be Nicaraguan socialism, Russian socialism, Chinese socialism, Vietnamese socialism. That in China, they refer to their system as socialism with Chinese characteristics. And when socialism comes to America, it will be a socialism with American characteristics, rooted in the contradictions of U.S. society, rooted in the problems we are facing here, crafted to address the injustices and the hardships faced by America in the age of capitalist decay. And that socialism in America will be a continuation of the great tradition of progressive organizers, of anti-racists, of labor activists, of populists, of community organizers, of forces of resistance to empire and exploitation. And that our duty is not to try and get the American people to adopt a foreign ideology. Our duty is not to convince the people of America to hate themselves, but rather to find the good within the American people, to find the John Brown and the Harriet Tubman and the Gus Hall and the Huey Newton blood that flows through the American people's veins and unleash it. Not only to reveal itself, but to assert itself as the rightful leader of a country that is in a deep economic, political, and spiritual crisis. This is what I believe. This is the ideology and the belief system that I put forward on these streams. This is what I teach. This is what I espouse. This is what I profess. And it is the passion with which I espouse these beliefs that propels me to keep going throughout the endless onslaught we face as a society in decay, as truth tellers in a world of lies, of those who advocate love in a world drowning in hate. This is what I believe. This is what I am dedicated to espousing. But tonight, I will do something different. Tonight, I will acknowledge something that has become apparent to me over the course of the last several years. It is a reality that anyone familiar with these streams should be aware of. But it has so far been an unacknowledged reality. I am not simply on here to preach socialism and anti-imperialism and progressive history. That these live streams serve another purpose. These live streams, more and more, are a source of energy, of reassurance, and community for people who think this way. For those of us who've seen the light, these live streams serve as a regular jolt, a regular shot in the arm, a regular pep talk, a regular optimistic moment, a way to give us hope. These live streams are more and more about giving those of us who see how evil the world is around us a reason not to become demoralized. They're more about people that don't fit in with this evil society having a reason to be, having something to look forward to, having a group of people that they can connect to. These live streams are more and more about learning and helping each other to stay afloat in this evil society. These live streams are about helping each other to live as we figure out our possible contribution, what contribution we can make to the struggle against imperialism and the struggle for social justice. These live streams are a lifeblood source for all of us. They keep us going. They give us hope and optimism. And they are dedicated not just to pushing facts and information about the world, but to helping us give each other tips on how to survive. Help us understand the big picture. Help us keep our eyes on the prize, so to speak. These live streams are a way for us to pool our collective knowledge and our resources and figure out how to keep living and how to keep going in the hostile environment that has been created all around us. Now, these live streams are about how to live a revolutionary life. These live streams are about how to be a revolutionary person. These live streams are about how to keep your strength and how to keep your feet on the right path and how to keep going forward and how to not fall into a rut and how to not fall apart, but rather to keep your eyes on the prize, keep your feet marching on the revolutionary path, to not collapse into the pessimism and hopelessness and decaying society all around us, to keep yourself motivated, to keep yourself grounded in ideology, to keep going despite everything that gets thrown at us, despite everything that they hit us with, to keep marching ahead. That is the purpose that these live streams serve. And we should acknowledge this purpose. There's no reason for us to pretend that this purpose doesn't exist. There's no reason for us to ignore this very real purpose that these live streams serve. This is a revelation that we should be very aware of. And it's also important to recognize that, I love being popular. I love it when the numbers on that screen are up to 350 and 700. I love it when my YouTube comment boxes are flowing with information and all of that. I love it when my numbers are higher. I love it when a lot of people are watching. I love it when my tweets are doing really, really well. I love getting attention. But some of us are meant for this, and some of us aren't. and straight is the gate, and narrow's the way. And there are very few people that are capable of really giving themselves to the revolution. There are a few people that are capable of really understanding what we put out on these streams. And that these streams are not for mass consumption. I mean, anyone can watch them. It's live on the internet. I'm not telling you anything deeply private because it's all, anyone can look at this. But what we were talking about here is somewhat esoteric. And what we were talking about here is for the advanced. And what we were talking about here is very specific. And if you are one of the people who pays attention to these live streams, who understands what it is we're talking about when we say out of the movement to the masses, when we talk about the city building tendency and the Atlanticist pathology, if you are one of the people that is capable of holding on to these concepts and these understandings and analysis of the world, if you are one of the people that's capable of doing that, you are the advanced. You are in the minority of U.S. society. And rather than dumb down and water down what we stand for, rather than lower things to the most common denominator, rather than pander to those who are not capable of really getting what we're about, our responsibility is to find those who are chosen for this. To find those who are able to make a real contribution to this struggle and plug them in and empower them and enable them to do great things and enable them to carry out great achievements and enable them to do the things that must be done in the service of historical progress and the service of righteousness and the service of justice against the forces of evil that rule the planet. And there are some who are capable of taking up history's challenge, and there are some who aren't. And rather than pander to those who aren't, and rather than feed illusions to those who aren't, and rather than try to drag along those who just don't want to do it, rather than do that, we are here for those who want this. And for those who aren't, we aren't. The choice is ultimately yours. We will not force you to come along. We will not force you to walk on this road. We will not force you to refuse to believe the lies and smears. We will not force you to stand up in the face of social attacks and pressure and demonization. We won't force you to do any of that. If you choose to do it, if you choose to live a life that matters, if you choose to give up simply living in the biological sense and instead choose to awaken, if that is what you believe, if that's what you were willing to do, we accept you. And if you are somebody who doesn't know, somebody who's on the fence, somebody who isn't sure, we're going to let you make it up, make your decision on your own. We're going to let you stay on the outside because this isn't a popularity contest. This isn't a numbers game. This is about truth in the face of falsehood. This is about trying to save humanity from the unfolding nightmare of capitalism and decay. And if you want to come along, we want you. And if you are capable of making a good contribution, we want you. And if you want to be the best that you can be, we want you to do that. But if you aren't ready for it and you don't want it, you don't have to. No one's making you. The door is open. You can walk through it, or you can not walk through it. And that is the approach. And it is with this understanding that tonight I thought I would revisit some remarks that I made a few months ago. I think it was in the springtime. I made some remarks about 4 forms of Satanism. And it was just some comments that I made on the live stream. It was just a presentation I prepared. 4 forms of Satanism, if people remember it. And that presentation I gave, 4 forms of Satanism, it ripped through the internet like you wouldn't believe. Actual devil-worshipping Satanists, followers of Anton LaVey, got their hands on it and wrote a big, long essay about this message that I gave. I am not exaggerating. You can go look it up. Type in Google, 4 forms of Satanism, Caleb Maupin. You will find a literal Satanist who was so infuriated by this speech that I gave that he wrote an essay about it that would probably print out to be 20, 30, maybe even 50 pages long. There were response videos. It was of all the things that I talk about. I'm on here defending Russia. I'm on here defending China. I'm on here defending North Korea. I'm on here defending Iran. I'm on here calling the U.S. government murderous and tyrannical. But none of that sparked the reaction that my presentation on 4 forms of Satanism, a philosophical self-help presentation that I gave sitting in my bedroom at my old apartment, it shook up the internet. And they were like big YouTube personalities who started showing it on their channel, and they were infuriated by it. And everyone was so upset with me talking about the 4 forms of Satanism. And it wasn't a literal essay. It wasn't an academic thing. It was just me making 4 points. I was using Satanism as a concept, Satanism as something that's in the culture. And I talked about 4 incarnations of what one might refer to as Satanism. And it caused an explosion throughout the internet. People lost their minds in response to this essay. Go to Google. You don't believe me? Go to Google and Google it right now. 4 forms of Satanism. This presentation that I gave caused people to just lose their minds. The Satanists were angry about it. The leftists were mad about it. The bread tubers were mad about it. The Christians were mad about it. The Catholics were mad about it. The Orthodox were mad about it. The anarchists were mad about it. Everyone was so fired up about 4 forms of Satanism. How dare Caleb talk this way? Oh my God, we got to rip. It was just comments that I made. It was just me giving my opinion about 4 forms of Satanism. And that forced me to think, well, tonight, I guess I have to give you 4 forms of Satanism revisited. Because it appears that these topics, these 4 forms of Satanism that I named, it appears that they touched a nerve. And since I gave this 4 forms of Satanism presentation, a lot of things have happened. And I've had to do a lot of reflecting, and I've had to think about them more. And I realized that the remarks I made were incomplete. For each of these 4 forms of Satanism, there were things that were left unsaid, things I did not yet know, things that had yet not been revealed to me through life experience that I now know. And for each of these 4 forms of Satanism, there is more information that is now available. So now tonight, we are going to talk about 4 forms of Satanism revisited. 4 forms of Satanism revisited. Now, the first form of Satanism that I mentioned was what I called constructive Satanism. And this was when I talked about the book of Job. And I talked about how in the Jewish tradition, Satan is not God's enemy who lives in a place called hell. Satan is one of God's angels who tests your faith. And I talked about how it is very important in any organization, in any business, in any community, to have people who ask the tough questions. To have people who get up and say, yeah, but what about this? To have people who get up and say, yeah, I'm not sure of that, or here's where this problem is. Just like in the Jewish tradition, God has this angel called Satan who tests your faith by making you go through hardship. In an organization, in any organization, you need people to play that role. You need individuals who will get up and say, this could be done better this way. You need people to get up and be that guy who says, yeah, but I'm looking at this and this could be better. And what about that? You need somebody to be that guy. You need somebody to be the naysayer. You need somebody to be the troubleshooter. You need somebody to be the questioner. And that when that's absent, and when an atmosphere is created where you don't have someone to play that role, this can lead to things deteriorating. Now, that was the first form of Satanism. It was the only one that was positive, was that you need the eternal questioner. You need the troubleshooter. You need the person who steps in and points to the flaws, the person who doesn't just go along with everything, the person who helps perfect the institution by asking the tough questions. You need that. And I talked about how in the Soviet Union, at the time of the fall of the Soviet Union, that wasn't going on. All the debate was beneath the surface. There were big problems in the Soviet Union in the 1980s. But if you watched all the party conventions and congresses, everyone just applauded. Like robots, they just applauded. And we talked about how in the socialist countries, because they were surrounded and under attack and bombarded, often they maintained a very, very authoritarian structure. And debate didn't go on in public. You know, Lenin, at first, there were three different parties in the Soviet Union: the left Menshevik Party, the left Social Revolutionary Party, and the Bolsheviks. But eventually, the left Social Revolutionary Party and the left Menshevik Party became a source of counter-revolutionary uprisings. So they were wiped out. And then, eventually, Lenin banned even factions within the Bolshevik Party. They needed the most ironclad discipline to get things done. And it was that ironclad discipline that the Soviet Union developed that enabled them to defeat the Nazis, that enabled them to save the world from fascism. But that ironclad discipline that started as a strength turned into a weakness. And that when it was time to make real corrections, when the Soviet system had to be adjusted in the 70s and 80s, they couldn't make the adjustment. The Soviet Union failed to bend, and so it broke, right? This was a big problem with the Soviet Union, was the lack of what you might call the constructive Satan. They didn't have the dark angel sitting there and saying, we have this problem with consumer goods. We have this problem with our young people. We have this problem with the way the party educates people. They did not have the constructive criticism. They did not have room for people to ask tough questions, to propose solutions to fix problems. And because of that shortcoming on the part of the Soviet leaders, the Soviet Union collapsed. And this was something that we should learn from. That's the point that I made in my first presentation on 4 forms of Satanism. But now, as I come back to this in Four Forms of Satanism Revisited, I see it from another angle. And the angle is this: that if someone sees a problem in an organization, and if someone is angered by that problem, and if someone sees a better way for things to be done in the organization, and if someone is annoyed or uncomfortable with how the organization is functioning, they have a responsibility. They have a responsibility in a revolutionary organization to do one of two things: to either leave the organization or to bring forward their criticism. That is their responsibility. And if they fail to do either of those things, that is a setup for disaster. If there's something in the revolutionary organization that you don't like, that you want to see fixed, say so. Raise your concern. Engage with people about it. Struggle to have it corrected or leave. But do not engage in the activities that Mao Zedong described in his essay, Combat Liberalism, of pretending that everything is just fine and then whispering and gossiping once the meeting is over. Do not go along with things that make you angry, only to keep bottled up, pent up anger inside and deep, utter resentment. Do not say everything's fine, everything's okay, when directly asked about it, only to go to other naysayers and tell them what the problem is and tell them how angry you are and let the anger build up. If someone's doing something you think is a problem, you should speak to them about it immediately. You should confront them with it immediately. You should engage with them immediately. You shouldn't try to covertly go behind people's backs and slither around like a snake and find other people who are mad about it and test the waters and see, does this person hate this person the way I do? Oh, they don't? All right, well, I'm not going to talk to them, and only find other people that are mad about it and keep them whispering about it. Ooh, keep them whispering. Ooh, we're going to hate and be angry together, but if anyone asks us if we're upset, we're going to pretend everything's fine. Oh, we're just going to pretend everything's fine. This is the way of the wrecker. This is the way of high school gossip. This is the way of the child. This is the way of the resentful person. This is the way of the destructive person. And so that first form of Satanism, that constructive Satanism, it's not just a good thing to have. It is a necessity. And no, the excuse of, I didn't feel like saying so, doesn't work. And the excuse of, well, there's no excuse. If you are angry about something in the organization, you either come forward and make it clear to the organization and ask for it to be corrected, or you leave the organization. You don't factionalize. You don't whisper about it. You don't secretly maneuver with people who agree with you. You fix the problem or you leave. You call for the problem to be fixed or you leave. And this is the only way that you can be principled. And if you do anything other than that, you're not acting in a principled way. And that it would be one thing. All right, if there was a policy in the organization, anyone who criticized things got thrown out, that would be grounds for a grievance. That would be unjust. If there was an atmosphere in the organization where if you criticized things, you got punished somehow, obviously that would be a reason, to not come forward. But if your organization does not have such a policy, and if you have a healthy organization that is looking to cultivate criticism, to cultivate an atmosphere where people can disagree, that wants to do better, that is constantly begging for feedback. How can we improve? How can we become more effective? How can we sharpen our weapons? How can we get the job done better? If you're in an organization that is constantly begging for advice about how to improve, how to get the job done more effectively, and you keep your mouth shut, and you keep your little grievances to yourself, and you only gather with people who agree with you, and you only keep them secretive with other people who agree with you, and then you start one-upping each other and making up stories and turning them into things that you're not, you don't belong in that organization. You have a responsibility to engage in constructive Satanism. And if you're not engaging in constructive Satanism, if you see problems in the organization, and instead of trying to address them and get them corrected, you simply utilize them to make friends and turn people against other people and to whisper behind people's backs, if that's the purpose that you serve, you are not doing your responsibility and you don't belong in that organization. Now, if you're in an organization where there's problems that you don't feel, that bother you so much, but yet you don't feel that you are able or you're willing or you have the confidence or the courage to actually get them addressed. If you just turn your problems into a way to make friends shit talking with people and in a way to whisper and all of that, if you do that, you don't belong in that organization. You should resign immediately. Revolutionary organizations should be inhabited by people who want them to succeed, not people who are just along for the ride, not people who think it's just a fun place to hang out. And this must be said. If you want problems in a revolutionary organization to be solved, if there's something that really bothers you in an organization, it must be addressed. And I will say that I was guilty of this at one point in my life. I was at one point in an organization where problems couldn't be addressed. But the reason that I was a naysayer, the reason that I was whispering behind the scenes was because this organization created an atmosphere in which there was retaliation if you criticized. This organization created an atmosphere where if you criticized, you were immediately called racist, sexist, or homophobic. If you demonstrated that you were more intelligent than the dumb people that ran the organization, they marginalized you and you didn't get to speak at meetings and they treated you badly. And the organization I was in Workers' World Party, I'll just be real with you. What the heck? Everything's out there now. Everything's all over the internet. In the Workers' World Party, there was an atmosphere where you were not allowed to disagree. If you got up and you said the organization should do something differently, they took you aside and said, that was very uncomradely. Don't you have confidence in our leaders? And you weren't allowed to disagree. And so people did disagree anyway. People disagreed. They just did it behind closed doors. They just did it, in an atmosphere, where it was safe. And there was suppression of debate, but disagreement went on. Disagreement still went on. And that's largely why the organization has fallen apart at this point, is that they suppressed debate. They suppressed debate, and they suppressed the ability to correct problems. And problems in the organization have gotten unfixed. The whole time I was in the organization, everyone complained about the newspaper. The newspaper was one of the most, and remains one of the most boring newspapers in history. It's not interesting to anyone. It's an article here, a protest happened here, a protest happened there, very little analysis, black and white, not even a cover page on it. It's awful. But if you got up and criticized the newspaper, they would take you aside and yell at you. Or they would promise people who came to them in the secret, we're complaining in the newspapers really often. They'd say, oh, it's about to get better. It's about to get better. And as a result, the newspaper just stayed sucking. And it still sucks. And the organization is falling apart. I was in this organization for years, and you were not allowed to disagree. And it was infuriating to me. And I never felt as good as I did in 2015. It was, I think, September of 2015. There was a meeting that happened at their office. And I was begged to go to this meeting. I didn't want to go to it. I had to work later in the day. They called me and said, basically I had to get up early and go to this meeting before work. And I walked into this meeting before work. I had to work the afternoon. I was there at like 10:30 in the morning. I was the only young person in the room. Everyone else in the room was over 60. And the meeting was all about, why is the party not recruiting anybody? And they talked about, there's 80 people at our office every week to plan Black Lives Matter protests. Why don't any of them join the party? And they turned to me. And they said to me, Caleb, you're the only young person in the room. Why aren't we recruiting any of the young people who come to our office? They said this to me. And I couldn't not respond. At that point, they were asking for it. They said they wanted to know. And what they wanted me to do was to mutter some bullshit. But at that point, I was very uninvolved in party activities. At that point, I was looking for a way out of the organization because it was falling apart and it was incapable of correcting its problems. At that point, every time I went to one of their public events, I would feel sick to my stomach and angry at them for how ineffective they were and how they were just stuck in the same rut, and how polls were showing that socialism was wildly popular, but they still couldn't get more than 20 people at their events every Friday night. And they pointed to me and they said, Caleb, why aren't we recruiting any of these young Black Lives Matter activists? They all know about the party. When we tell them about the party, they recite the Wikipedia page back to us. Why aren't they joining the party? And so I had no choice in that moment. They asked for it. If it was a healthy organization, I would have told them this half a decade before. But I knew dissent wasn't allowed. But in this atmosphere, when the leader of this organization points to me in the meeting and says, Caleb, tell us why we're not recruiting young people. You're the only young person. Tell us why. I had to give them an answer. And I said, they're not joining because they don't agree with us. I said, people don't join a group that supports North Korea because they think protesting around trendy liberal causes is a lot of fun. I said, and if you want these young people who are coming to the office to plan Black Lives Matter rallies to join us, you need to argue with them about political line. You need to be able to explain to them a socialist and anti-imperialist perspective. And what I was criticizing was that they were constantly engaged in tailism. I said, you can't just pander to them. You can't just assume that because, you let them speak at the rally and hand them the microphone. You can't just assume that because, you're nice to them and tell them that they're really cool and that you like their shirt, that they're going to join an organization that espouses Marxism-Leninism and supports North Korea. You need to be able to engage with them and argue with them about political line, and you need to win them to your political line. You need to be able to talk to these people about socialism. You need to actually engage with people about socialism. And this attitude that you all have, where anyone who comes around the group who seems like they know about Marx or know about Lenin or know about Stalin is labeled too intellectual. is labeled, oh, they must not be a real activist. But instead, you chase after the dumbest people. You chase after the people who seem the least political. You chase after the people who seem the least engaged. And that's who you prioritize recruiting. That strategy where you try to recruit the people who are the least interested in your politics, and you show so much disinterest in the people who actually believe what you believe, and you're incapable of arguing with these people and engaging with them about what it is you believe. That is the reason you are not recruiting them. And if you want to recruit them, you need to be able to explain to them why North Korea is good. And you need to be able to explain to them why Marxism-Leninism matters. And you need to be able to explain to them why the party is important. That's what you need to do. That's what you need to be able to do. And if you can convince them that North Korea is good, if you can convince them that Marxism-Leninism is the correct ideology, they will join you. But this assumption that they're going to join a group with very extreme beliefs that are outside of the mainstream, and the way you're going to convince them of it is by never talking to them about it and just tailing after their liberal tendencies, that is a delusion. And I said that. And if this had been a healthy organization that I was a member of, if this had been an organization that really wanted to grow and expand, they would have said, wow, thank you very much, Caleb. You're right. Let's learn to do that. And in fact, let's turn to the people in our organization who are capable of engaging about this, who read lots of books, the people in our organization who do understand theory, and let's empower them to take on that role. But is that what happened? No. That night, someone called me up on the phone and cussed me out. Who the fuck do you think you are? You're racist, talking down to the black and brown leadership of this organization. Who do you think you know everything? You don't know. I mean, I was just cussed out on the phone. Well, there you go. But I'll tell you, when I said it, it was like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I felt amazing because I had been carrying around this rage, this anger at their anti-intellectualism, at their movementarian revisionism and their tailism for a long time. And even though, I mean, this ultimately led to me leaving the organization that had been my home, my family for years, even though I had, I ended up losing some of my closest friends over it. That moment, it was literally, imagine you'd been carrying a 10-pound weight, or not a 10-pound, a 50, 60-pound weight on your back for like years, and you finally dropped it. You almost float. That's how I felt after I said that in that meeting. I almost floated because I had wanted to say this, and I had been pumped up and angry about these feelings for years. And I had been so tired of being suppressed, of this attitude that communism wasn't important in a supposedly communist organization. And it was like a weight had been lifted off of my shoulders and I could float. It needed to be said. And why was it? And I knew why they weren't going to change. The real reason it wasn't going to change is because this party that I was in was led by stupid people. It had been started by smart people. Sam Marcy was a very smart man. Ted Dostal was a very smart man. Vince Copeland was a very smart man. But these smart people had surrounded themselves with stupid people. And these stupid people had now inherited the organization. And these stupid people had skills. They were very good at organizing rallies. They were very good at speaking. They just couldn't think of the concepts. They had to learn the concepts from somebody else. But the reason that they were never going to change wasn't because no one would say that. It was because these stupid people who did not understand communism were at the top of the organization. And they had to be the center of attention at all times. They had to be in the spotlight. Everything had to somehow involve them being the center of attention. They spoke at every conference. They were the keynote speakers at every rally. They got to write books. No one else was allowed to write books. They had to be the center of attention all the time. And they were stupid. And so the group had to be stupid, because if the group stopped being stupid, then somebody else would get the attention. And that's what the problem really was. And that's why this issue that I observed was never going to be corrected. But anyway, that's a long tangent. But the point of that tangent is to say that, first of all, I know the problem. I know what it's like to be in an organization that does not have constructive Satanism, that does not have people asking the tough questions. I know how toxic that is. The second point is that I know that the worst thing that one can do is create an atmosphere in your group where people aren't allowed to disagree. That is the worst thing you can do, because it sets an organization down the course of deterioration. And furthermore, I have never created that atmosphere in the organizations in which I work. In the organizations in which I play a leadership role, I have always worked hard to do the opposite. But there are certain people that did not believe in the organization that I was building. There are certain people that did not want to see the Center for Political Innovation expand. They did not want our events to be successful. They did not want us to reach 1K by May. They did not want us to expand. They saw that we had resources. They saw that we had members, and they wanted to mooch off of our success. They saw it as an opportunity to take a piece for themselves and run. And even though we had an atmosphere where these people could have disagreed, and even though that there were mistakes made, I made real mistakes, and I've been upfront and honest with you all about that, and I was upfront and honest with the whole organization about it. And even though mistakes were made, even though problems were made, they chose not to try and correct these problems because they didn't want the organization to get better. They were just along for the ride, just there to take a piece, to take a hunk, just there to whisper and nitpick. And that will no longer be tolerated. There won't be anybody like that. Anyone can join on the website, but to become involved in the day-to-day activities of the Center for Political Innovation, to help us stage our events, to move into a leadership position in the organization, you are obligated to prove that you're on our side. And unfortunately, that won't be an easy process. It's not something where you just do one thing. You give us a $20 donation and we're like, oh, he gave us $20. He must. No, it won't be like that. People will be tested over the course of time. And the test won't be whether you agree with me. And the test won't be whether you obey me blindly. That's not what it's about. The test will be how much you prove yourself to want the group to succeed and to understand what the group is really about. And that was our mistake. And that's why I say I'm not dragging people into this, because the people that were the wreckers, the people that were the naysayers, were the people that we dragged into it. The people who didn't really want to go along with it. The people who refused to really learn what we were about. The people who were just kind of along for the ride. The people that we always had to call and say, come on, can you do this? The people that I was always begging to write more and begging to speak more and trying to get them to do more for the group. And I'm done chasing after people. There won't be people like that in the group. If you want to write more, I'll help you write more. If you want to speak more, I'll help you speak more. We need more people to step up to the plate. We need more people to take on the challenge of building an organization. But if you're somebody whose heart isn't in it, if you don't believe in what the group is about, done with that. Done with that. And that is my revisitation of the first form of Satanism, constructive Satanism. And then, in my talk that I gave last spring, I talked about yet another form of Satanism. I talked about adolescent Satanism. I talked about contrarianism. I talked about rebellion. I talked about people that disagree for disagreement's sake. I talked about the teenagers who like the F word. I talked about edgelordism. I talked about people who like to trigger their religious parents. I talked about the mindset of just going against whatever exists in order to prove your independence. And I talked about someone I knew who was a communist, who, during the Vietnam War, she got into waving the flag of the National Liberation Front of the Vietnamese, the NLF. And that there were many people during the Vietnam War who did wave the flag of the NLF. And it was a good thing to do. It meant you supported the Vietnamese people in their righteous struggle against U.S. imperialism. However, for this person that I knew, it wasn't that. It was, we're breaking a rule. We're waving the flag of the enemy. We're not following the rules. I have never met someone in my life, I'm just telling you the truth, who enjoyed lying as much as this woman did. There was somebody I knew who was getting an apartment, and she helped them fudge their apartment application to say they worked somewhere they didn't work and all kinds of things. And I could see the joy on this boomer's face as she was fudging this person's apartment application. I was sitting there at the office and she was helping this person fill out their apartment. She's like, we'll say you work here. Yes. And we'll say that this is a publishing company. And she was just thrilled, just overjoyed by the prospect of lying. It was demented. And I understood this person in that moment. I understood why, when she was 20 years old, she'd been running around with the Vietnamese flag. It wasn't because of the fact that she just had been won to a political line that the Vietnamese people were right in their fight against U.S. imperialism. No, it was because she was waving the flag of the enemy. She's doing something you're not supposed to do. She's breaking the rules. It was this unhealthy teenage Satanism. And for a lot of American communists, that's what being a communist is. It's not about truly understanding the doctrine of the liberation of the proletariat. It's not about truly understanding the struggle of the colonized people of the world for justice. It's not about trying to build a mass movement of the proletariat to end the wars and build a government of action to fight for working families. Oh, no. It's about being in favor of the devil. I like Stalin. He killed millions of people. I like Mao. He's a mass murderer. And this absolutely must be eradicated. This must be eradicated. Must be eradicated. There's got to be no room for that kind of behavior in our movement. Because that kind of mindset will guarantee that you are always in the minority. If this is the way that you understand politics, if your politics is based on triggering people, if your politics is based on offending people, if your politics is based on breaking the rules, it's not real politics. And the right nowadays, the right is all about this. It's all trigger the libs. Trigger the libs. Right? Trigger the libs. Right? What can I say that will get me canceled? What can I say that will be offensive? What can I say that will piss people off? And it's really obnoxious. Look, if you believe in socialism, if you're an anti-imperialist, if you believe in Marxism, if you want to overturn capitalism and imperialism, if you think Russia is right and Ukraine is wrong, you're going to offend enough people anyway. Right? If you stick up for the historical legacy of socialism, if you admire the good things that Stalin did, you are going to offend people anyway. There is absolutely no reason to go out of your way to offend people when you have our beliefs. Our beliefs are going to offend people anyway. What we need is for you to do the opposite. Your job is not to trigger people, to trigger the libs, to trigger the conservative. Your job is to make the politics that we have that is already triggering, that is already upsetting to people, more palpable. Your job is to try and get people past their triggering, to get around the triggering that people have in order to talk sense into them. And the opposition to patriotic socialism is the biggest proof that I have ever seen that adolescent, teenage, contrarian socialism is the bulk of internet communists. The majority of people on the internet these days who call themselves communists are simply adolescent, teenage Satanists. That's all they are. That's all they are. Because why do they not want to? Why are they so offended by an American flag? It's because their whole identity as a communist, their whole identity as being a Marxist is about giving the middle finger to the American flag. It's about saying, no, mom and dad, you're patriotic. You like America? Well, I'm a communist. That's all it is. It is just adolescent Satanism. It is just, well, everyone tells me Stalin's bad. I like Stalin. I got a picture of him on his wall. I think he should have killed more people. Yeah, that's all it is. So, of course, they wave the American flag, talk about socialism being good for the country. We can't do that. We can't do that. That defeats the whole purpose. The whole reason these people became socialists in the first place was to offend America, to tell America they don't follow America, to go against America. So we can't talk positive. We can't wave the American flag. We can't make arguments that show that socialism would improve the lives of the American people. We can't do that. We can't make an argument to show that socialism and breaking out of imperialism would make people's lives better. Our job, we're in this to tell everyone they're bad, to tell everyone that they're sinful, to tell everyone that they're no good. We're in this to prove that we're individuals. We're in this to show everyone how free thinking we are and how we don't conform to society and we have unpopular ideas. That's what this is. That's what this is. And these people don't want to be popular. That's why populism is a dirty word to them. They don't want to be popular. They just want to be contrarian. They just want to offend. They just want to say things that will upset the conservatives that they're around. That's what they want to do. And that's all they want to do. Right? And it's weird. It's very, very weird. Among normal, liberal teenagers, the trend is to become an anarcho-communist or a DSA liberal. And for them, that's just an expression of conformity. That's just because that's what their college professors are teaching them. That's what BreadTube is teaching them. It's just an expression of conformity. They're learning all the politically correct rules. And in order to be a trendy, anti-Trump liberal, that's what you become. You become an anarcho-communist. You become a democratic socialist or whatever. But tankyism, and this is interesting to me, tankyism, Marxism, Leninism. Someone pointed out to me, I'm the first person to own tanky. Tanky was a slur. It was a slur. It was the tankies. They're bad. They it was like these communists who support Soviet tanks, the symbol of authoritarianism. They're bad. And then I made a video in 2016, 2017. I made a video called Why Be a Tanky? And it got quite a few views. It's on the internet still. It got quite a few views. And I said, we should own being a tanky because that makes us part of the history of socialism. And I was the first person to come forward and call myself a proud tanky. And I owned it. I owned being a tanky. And that opened the floodgates. And people started owning being a tanky. But one thing I noticed is that tankies as a group tend to be from conservative backgrounds. And that makes sense. It makes sense because it's conservatives nowadays. It used to be everybody, but it's conservatives nowadays will say communism is evil. It failed everywhere it's ever been tried. Communism, is a failed system. And so it tends to be people from conservative areas who become tankies, tanky communists. And it's tankyism is a way to confront head on the bullshit anti-communism of conservatives. The bullshit anti-communism of liberals has been somewhat softened. Now they just argue that all socialist countries are somehow fascist and authoritarian, illiberal. They don't focus on Marxism being bad. Liberals don't focus on that. Wokeness has this vague interest in oppression and injustice between the worker and the employer. And, Marxism isn't evil in the minds of liberals anymore. It just needs to be watered down into nothing. That's what it is. Whereas among conservatives, Marxism is pure evil. And in fact, among conservatives, Marxism is Joe Biden. Joe Biden is a Marxist. The U.S. is secretly governed by Chinese communists, etc. Right? And so among people in conservative areas, there's a tendency to become a tanky. Good. I accept that. I'd rather that people defend the existing socialist countries and have anti-imperialist politics than not. I'd rather that people point to China's achievements than just go, that's not real socialism. Okay. However, for a lot of these people who embrace tankyism, it is just an expression of adolescent Satanism. And that's why it walks hand in hand with third worldism. Third worldism is Marxist incelism. It's the belief that we can never win. Right? And that's Jason. Watch Jason on Ruhe's channel. It is just a never-ending cry of there's no hope. And he has all kinds of videos where he just breaks into rants about how angry he is that anyone thinks there's hope, because there's not any hope. Okay, like someone was excited that a socialist got elected in Seattle. Nuh-uh, she's not a real socialist. Okay, guys, so stop being excited about it. Somebody was excited that China is doing real things, good things around the world. Nuh-uh, China's not doing any good. They're capitalists. Okay, stop it. His whole mindset, Jason's entire mindset is there's nothing good is ever allowed to happen. Not in the third world, not in the first world. It's all entirely hopeless. And nothing triggers Jason more than suggesting that there might actually be a chance that we could win. There might actually be a chance that imperialism could be dismantled. There might actually be a chance that socialism could be victorious. That's like, it triggers him because his entire mindset is he's a third worldist. He's a good Western person surrounded by evil Euro settlers. He's good. Everyone's bad. The whole world's bad. He's good. He carries on the true tradition of Marx and Lenin and Mao, and he's the good socialist, the good anti-imperialist living in the evil empire. And there's no chance that we could ever win. There's no chance that we could ever have a mass socialist movement or anti-imperialist movement here. There's no hope. And that's perfect, because if there's no hope, he doesn't have to do anything. Fox of Space Commune podcast, he said it the best of anybody. Pessimism is dangerous. Or optimism is dangerous, rather, because it gives you an obligation. If there's no chance we can win, if the world is just falling apart and there's no way we can possibly win, you don't have to do anything. You can just sit back and enjoy the ride. But if somebody comes along and says, hey, we could actually win. Hey, we could actually stop World War III. Hey, we could build a movement for jobs and healthcare and education. We could fight for a government of action. I mean, that all of a sudden gives people this moral obligation to get their shit together and start doing everything they can so that we can actually win. And that is what people do not want. They don't want that. They don't want that. And this teenage, adolescent, contrarian Satanism is a cover. It's largely a cover. It is a way to curse the society around you and feel pure. And it walks hand in hand with third worldism. And it's just a way to celebrate your own isolation from society. And we need to struggle against it. Now, it's not to say that people don't start out there and get better. I started out with a lot of that. When I was a teenager, you guys wouldn't like me when I was a teenager. I mean, you guys wouldn't have liked me when I was a teenager. I was all about this negativity. I was all about this, I was a third worldist. I thought all the people that I went to school with were dirty, rotten Euro settlers. I didn't want to hear anything about labor unions. When I was a teenager, I lived in a town where everyone, for the most part, supported the Iraq War and thought that we needed to go bomb those Arabs because of 9/11. And that all Muslims are terrorists, and that the war in Iraq was good, and and people wouldn't even believe me when I said there were no weapons of mass destruction. I'm like, no, I heard on TV that there were. They would insist for years after the invasion of Iraq there actually were weapons of mass destruction based on the president. Are you saying that Bush would lie to us? Why would Bush lie? He's a good guy. I mean, it was infuriating. And a lot of these people were union members. They worked in a factory that made Smucker's jelly. They were represented by the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. And I didn't want to hear anything about labor unions because I thought these people need to be poorer because they're blindly supporting the system. And I was full of this teenage adolescent Satanism, and I was into third worldism, and I read Settlers, the Mythology of the White Proletariat, and I read stuff by Bernardine Dorn and Bill Ayers, and I read Ward Churchill. Fox News was canceling Ward Churchill before canceling was a thing, before social media. But Bill O'Reilly on his show, he did 100 episodes all about Ward Churchill and how Ward Churchill was no good. And I bought like 3 of Ward Churchill's books on the justice of roasting chickens and A Little Matter of Genocide. And I was, that's right. Americans are Euro settlers. They're complicit in the crimes of empire. And I'm the good American. But all these people around me are evil. And I bought that line, hooks, line, and sinker, because it was a way to express anger at the society I was living in. It was a way to deal with certain personal things that I'm not even going to get into. But I got out of that. I got into communism from that dark teenage Satanist place. Trying to continue without crying. I got into it from that dark teenage Satanist, destructive, hateful, angry place. But in the movement, in the revolutionary organizations, and most especially in the third world, I found something different. I'll never forget the day when I was 15 years old. I've told this story many times. I was 15 years old, went to the communist bookstore. My mother dropped me off. She and my brother went to a mall in the area. My mother dropped me off. She said, "Don't leave the store. Do not leave the store." So I went to the bookstore. They're having a conversation about Bush and Iraq. Then one of the local communist youth activists handed me a stack of newspapers. And he said, "We're going to go out and sell the paper." And I was like, oh boy. Wait, what are you telling me? We're going to go sell the newspaper? I'm going to walk up to people I don't know and try to sell them a newspaper about communism? I can't do this. They're like, "No, we do this all the time. It'll be fine." And I went out and I was so nervous. And I walked up to people, do you want something about socialism? I was so nervous. And the first newspaper I ever sold, I was wearing my athletic jacket from high school, had a big O on it. This couple, I walked up to them. It was a man and his wife or girlfriend. And he said, well, young man, I don't agree with communism, but you go to Oberlin College, so I'll buy that from you. I sold him a newspaper. I was so shy. My parents had told me not to talk to people about communism. You're embarrassing the family. Everyone's talking about us. My brother would get mad at me. Oh, everyone at school says I'm a communist because you are. Can you shut up about it already? But yet I discovered, after doing it over and over and over again, that I was actually pretty good at talking to people about communism. I had some of the best newspaper sales numbers in Cleveland. I could sell communist newspapers like nobody else could. And that was the beginning of getting out of that mindset. But then, fast forward about a decade, I went to the World Festival of Youth and Students in Quito, Ecuador. There was that moment that I've described so many times, where the plane from North Korea arrived and the whole airport was thunderously cheering for the delegates from North Korea. The men in their suits and the women in their long traditional Korean gowns. This whole airport, thousands of people from Greece and Spain and Angola and Vietnam and Cuba were all thunderously applauding for a plane full of North Korean comrades. Life-changing experience. I met with the communists from around the world, and I thought, these are my people. As frustrated as I was with the communists in America, they were frustrated with the communists in America too. They were frustrated with the communists in America too. They had the same criticisms that I had. And then I talk about when I went on the ship to Yemen with Iranian doctors. We're on this ship going to Yemen. We see American fighter jets flying overhead. The Israelis and the Saudis are saying that our ship is full of weapons, which there were no weapons on the ship. That wasn't the case. And I'm genuinely fearing for my life. I mean, we're about to go to a war-torn country. I'm surrounded by doctors and medical surgeons and technicians of an operating theater. And I'm with Iranians who are deeply religious, Shia Muslims. Only a few of them that can speak English. And those Muslims that I'm around, what do they want to talk to me about all the time? They want to talk about religion. They say, Caleb, you're a Christian. Tell us about the Christian tradition. What do Christians believe about Jesus? How is that different than what Muslims believe about Jesus? And suddenly, I'm talking about God. I'm talking about the Bible. And it all seems to just come so naturally to me. It all just seems to come so naturally to me. And, you know, it was over the course of those experiences and of the course of being in a revolutionary movement, over the course of going to the third world and meeting actual communists, not Western LARPers, over the course of being in an organization with real people, that I broke out of that dark, satanic mindset that I had adopted as a teenager. I stopped being antisocial. I stopped hating people. I stopped being just full of rage at the society around me. I started to understand love and human solidarity. And I really mellowed out as a person. I just stopped having an angry look on my face all the time. That's hard to believe. I started being more patient with people. You know? And this is what I wish people would understand. If you're stuck in that teenage adolescent Satanism, if you're stuck in that mindset of hating the world around you and just being full of rage, there's a way to feel better. There's a way to heal from your pain and from your trauma. And that is by being part of a revolutionary organization. And that is by connecting with a movement that's bigger than yourself. That is by making sacrifices for a higher cause. That is through connecting with other people. And if you're stuck, if you're an internet communist who's stuck there, you can get out of that place. You don't have to stay there. You can be saved from this. There is a way out of that dark, antisocial, toxic, hateful place that so many internet communists are in. That adolescent Satanism, that rage at the whole world, that place that Jason Unruhe is in. You can get out of that. You can get out of that, but doing that takes bravery. You have to pull yourself together. And you have to say, I am going to join a revolutionary movement. I believe in communism, so I'm going to go meet with other communists. And I'm going to put up with bullshit from other communists. And I'm going to be in an organization with other communists. And I'm going to let other communists let me down. And I'm going to get angry at people. And I'm going to have disagreements with people. I'm going to get my feelings hurt. There is a way out. There is a way out of this dark place that one can get into. There is a way out. But you have to choose it. I can't drag you into it, and that was my mistake. Everyone I tried to drag out of that mindset has let me down. Straight is the gate and narrow's the way. And if you don't want to come out of that, and if you don't want to have the transformation that I have, if you want your communism to just continue to be an expression of antisocial sentiments, I can't fix that on your part. If you don't have the ability to do what I did, if you don't have the ability to just toughen up and push through and say, I am going to connect with other people. I am going to be part of a real movement. I am really going to change the world. And I'm going to take the risk of being friends with people who are going to let me down. I'm going to take the risk of being hurt by other people. I'm going to take the risk of having my ideas be rejected by other people. If you can't do that, I cannot do it for you. Now, if you make the choice, you make the choice, I can help you. I can help you, and I want to help you. That's what I live to do. I live to help people make this choice. I live to pull you into life, to pull you out of the darkness. That's what I live to do. It is my inner drive. It is my passion. I want to pull you out of the darkness. I want to give you a place to belong. I want you to become part of a revolutionary movement. But if you don't want it yourself and I drag you into it, it won't work. You have to want it. That part within you right now that is hearing what I say and longs to be part of this, the part inside of you that is hearing me and saying, my God, I wish I could give up the hate. I wish I could give up the loneliness. I wish I could actually be part of something. That part of you has to take over. And you have to make the decision. You must make the decision to listen to that voice. I can't do it for you. And I tried to do it for certain people, and I failed you. And by trying to force it on people, I screwed up a lot of things, and a lot of things went badly because I tried to make people, and they weren't ready for it. And if you're not ready for it, be gone. Be gone. Don't waste my time. I want to help you. I want to help you find the love that I've found. I want to help you find the healing that I have found. I want to bring you in to the movement. I want you to find the joy and the love that I have, but I cannot do it for you. I can't do it for you. And if I try to make you do something, if I pressure you to do something, if I do that, you're only going to resent me. Straight is the gate and narrow is the way. And some people are chosen for this and some people aren't. You can save yourself and I can help you save yourself, but I cannot save you. I'm not God. I'm not Jesus. I'm not a Messiah. I'm not here to save you. I'm just a guy. And if you want to save yourself, and if you have it within yourself to save yourself, I would love to help. And if you don't have it within you, if you just want to continue deteriorating, that's the way it goes. That's the way it goes. But I continue. Enough of the unnamed orange beverage. From here on out, it's unnamed water beverage. Got plenty of that. Got a whole bottle of it. There is yet another form of Satanism. And the 4 forms of Satanism, first we talked about the constructive Satanism. Next we talked about its opposite, really, which is the teenage adolescent Satanism. And the third one is ideological Satanism. And that is really the closest thing to what the Church of Satan, Anton LaVey, actually teaches. It's Ayn Rand, it's Friedrich Nietzsche, it's philosophical irrationalism. And if you ever want to study it, I recommend this book. It's a big book, not a small book, but if you're not intimidated by big books, people get very intimidated by the size of books. So maybe it's not for you, but George Lukács, The Destruction of Reason. This is an intense study of ideological Satanism. Friedrich Nietzsche, the Nazis, Ayn Rand. And it is the belief that the world is best governed by the law of the jungle. The strong rule over the weak. And that socialism and Christianity are two of the same thing. They are the cry of vengeance from the weak against the strong. And that Marxism is nothing but Christianity, and Christianity is for weaklings. Look, when it gets down to it, throughout human history, every society that has ever existed has had laws. It has had moral and ethical systems. It has had ideology. And these laws and these moral and ethical systems and these ideologies are the only thing that protects the weak from the strong. And without them, the strong can completely rule over the weak. Right? Me being a 34-year-old man who's in decent physical condition, if I saw an old woman crossing the street with her purse, I could go up to her and punch her and take her purse. I could do that. I would go to jail. That would be called theft. I would also be immoral. My conscience would not allow me to do such a thing. I would have compassion for the poor woman. I would think, poor woman, how must it feel to have some big guy who's younger than you punch you in the face and take your purse? My morality prevents me from doing such a thing. And the legal system is there in case I never get the morality, right? I would not do such a thing. But if law doesn't exist, there's no societal restraint on me doing such things. And if morality doesn't exist, if I'm never taught to have a conscience, taught to have empathy, what's to stop me from doing that? Law and morality, as flawed as they are, and they are completely flawed. The law is unjust. The ethical systems are unfairly enforced. And thank you for the super chat. More super chats are appreciated. And we're the biggest critics of social orders. We're the biggest critic of social orders. We're the biggest critic of moral system. It's not perfect. But if you declare that law and morality are no good, and that law and morality need to be gotten rid of, if you do that, what you are setting the stage for is the ruthless rule of those who are strong over the weak. That's what you're setting the stage for. And in our society, let me add, one's strength is not so much in terms of one's physical strength as it is financial. Your strength is how much money you have. That is your strength, is how much money you have. Some people have lots of money and they are strong. And some people do not have lots of money and they are weak. And libertarianism, liberalism, the ideology that puts the individual above all else, that calls for the maximization of the lifting of restraints upon the individual, this is Satanism. When Friedrich Nietzsche writes about the blonde beast, when he hails imperialism and says that imperialism is great because it's getting the Western man that was becoming weak and compassionate, it's getting him to once again reassert his strength. This is pure evil. This is evil. This is absolute evil. Ayn Rand talking about the virtue of selfishness. Leo Strauss, Persecution and the Art of Writing. Anti-populism, the idea that some people are intended to rule over others and that there needs to be a maximum amount of social control to make sure that the inferior rabble never get together and start asserting their rights. This mindset that says anytime the masses of people are in motion, it's always Nazism, it's always fascism, it always leads to another Holocaust. That mindset is satanic. That anti-human mindset that says human beings are dangerous, human beings are a problem, human beings are a cancer. We need to control the rabble. We need to rule over them. We need to allow the unlimited exploitation. We need to lift all regulations on capital and maximize capitalist profits. And at the same time, we need to unleash all kinds of methods to make sure that no populist or working class mass movement is ever formed. I mean, this stuff, whether it comes from the neocons, whether it comes from the synthetic left, whether it comes from the libertarians, it's all the same shit. The message is human beings are bad. Human beings are a cancer. Human beings are evil. And we can't have a government that controls the means of production because that'll restrict the better ones who own the means of production. And, we can't have a mass popular movement where people are organizing and giving themselves to a cause because that, as long as the people are dangerous and evil, they're all little Hitlers deep down, and that'll lead to an evil totalitarian state. And we have to invade Iraq because Saddam Hussein is a brutal populist dictator who's restraining the great intellectuals of the world. It's all the same shit. Neoconservatism, Leo Strauss, Persecution and the Art of Writing, Irving Kristol, the Shachtmanites, neoconservatism, libertarianism, Ayn Rand, the virtue of selfishness, end to altruism, the synthetic left, Susan Sontag, who thinks that fascism is people in groups, that fascism is when you glorify, mass movements, when you celebrate the past, that Alberto Eco crap that they always say I'm fascist based on. All of that is the same shit. Malthusianism, it's anti-populism. It's the idea that human beings are the enemy, that human beings are just another animal, that human beings are a cancer on Mother Earth, that human beings need to be eliminated, that human beings, that human beings are no good, that mindset is satanic. And it's weird. It's weird. You know, Protestant theologians would tell us that human beings are purely evil and only through divinity can we become better. And that this mindset that sees human beings as a cancer, human beings as toxic, human beings as evil, human beings as destructive, this mindset is more Christian, right? And it's only through religion that we can get the goodness. Well, that's where I would reject standard Protestant evangelical theology. And I would say, no, human beings are created in the image of God. Human beings are endowed with a certain spark of creative power. There's a reason that ants have been building their ant farms the same way for millions of years, that beavers have been building their beaver dams the same way for millions of years, but human beings have done so many amazing things. We are not just another animal. We are sparked with a special creative power. We have the ability to do things, to make the environment serve us, to reinvent our relationship with Mother Nature, to come together, to cooperate, we have amazing abilities as human beings. Human beings are special. Human beings have something good. We don't always listen to it. We have an animalistic side. We have a primitive nature that gets in our way and holds us back. But the essence of this ideological Satanism, when it really gets down to it, the essence of this ideological Satanism is rejection of humanity. It's anti-humanism. That is the essence of it. It is the belief that humanity is irredeemable, the belief that humanity is an inherently negative force in the universe. That is the essence of it. If you can't believe that there is something good within human beings, if you cannot believe there is something special within human beings, if you cannot get excited about all that humanity has achieved, if you cannot love your fellow human beings, you view mankind and your fellow human beings with utter contempt, you will fall into this mindset. And this is the ideology of the ruling class. The ruling class sees that humanity is ready to overcome them. The ruling class sees that humanity is ready to move toward a higher plane of existence. The ruling class sees that humanity is ready to keep marching forward, and that spells the end of their rule. And so because of that, they want to eliminate humanity. They want to drive down the population. They want to stop human technological progress. They want to keep Africa in poverty. They want to drive down living standards. They want to reduce the birth rate. They want to reduce the population. Anti-humanism is the source of Satanism. And that sounds so weird. But when it gets down to it, if you can't see the goodness, the spark of godly creativity within all of us, then you will fall into the satanic mindset. And that Satanism is the ruling ideology of our period. All the political forces that have dominance in our time espouse that belief. All of them. They emphasize it in different ways. They craft their narrative in a different way. But all of the ruling forces of the West have a view of humanity that is inherently negative. And as a result, they operate accordingly. And that is the point I wanted to make about the third form of Satanism. And the final form of Satanism that I discussed back in March, when I was talking about 4 forms of Satanism, the final form of Satanism I talked about was internal Satanism. I talked about people who have that voice in the back of their head that says, you're a failure. You can't achieve anything. Everyone's going to laugh at you. Stay in bed. Don't get up. Don't go out and face the world. It's only going to get worse. That dark, self-destructive, non-motivating, demoralizing force within all of us that enables us to get in our own way, that enables us to stop moving forward, that enables us to not do what we need to do, that prevents us from moving ahead the way we would like to. That dark part of all of our souls that tells us there's no hope, there's nothing to believe in, that causes us to wallow in self-doubt. That dark, dark part of us, the internal Satan, that is something that so many people struggle with. So many people struggle with it. And in response to that, I won't say much more than I said in the original stream, which is there are two sources that it comes from. One, isolation. Other people are the cure for it. When you're around other people, and they're lifting you up, it's easier to stay up. And two, this thing, social media. Social media. Social media is very, very good. Very, very, very good at bringing out that dark side of you. Why do you think there are so many videos on YouTube? Let me just throw this out there. Why do you think there are so many videos on YouTube? I was just thinking about this other day. So many YouTube streamers. All they do is show videos of other people. And they just go, look at their face. They look retarded. Oh my God, that's stupid. Oh. I mean, so much YouTube social media streaming content is literally just showing other people's content and not making any factual or substantial criticism of it, but simply just insulting the other person. That's all it is. I mean, it'd be one thing if they were showing this other person. I do that on here, right? I show you other people's content, and I say, well, this is where they're wrong. I put factual corrections in it. I disagree with it politically, but so much of social media is not that. It is just people showing other people's content, insulting the other person's appearance, insulting the other person's voice, insulting the way the other person looks, making childish jokes at the other person's expense. In no way are they engaging with what the other person said. Are they making any substantial critique of it? It's all just this vile, childish, stupidness. And if you look at these YouTube channels, this is all these people do. There's many YouTube channels like this, where it's just some pathetic person just sitting there insulting other people on YouTube in the most childish, juvenile ways, full of profanity and references to feces and references to genitalia. And it is just vile content. And if you consume this kind of content, even if it's about people you don't like, that voice in your head is going to get louder. I'm just warning you. Don't believe me. I'm just telling you what's a fact. If you consume that kind of content, and if you listen to voices all day, tearing down other people, insulting other people in this childish way, it might make you laugh. You might enjoy it in the moment, but you're absorbing that voice. You're absorbing that hate, that anti-humanism. And every time you do that, it's like taking that voice, that hateful voice in the back of your head, and pumping steroids into it. Oh, you're not big enough. Hateful voice in the back of my head. You're not big enough. Here, have a boost. And you're just giving a jolt of life, a new jolt of life to that hateful voice in the back of your own head. That's all you're doing. Every time you consume content of that caliber and you listen to a voice like that, that is cruel, that tears people down, that's making fun of people, it's bullying people, it's not making substantial political critiques, it's not even listening to what the other person is saying, it's just on there acting like a fool. Every time you consume that kind of content, that internal Satanism, that hateful voice in the back of your head is going to get stronger and more powerful. Every time. Every time you do that. And on top of that, the more you isolate yourself, the more you're sitting at home staring at one of these, the more you're not connecting with other people, the way you're not working with other people toward a common goal, the more you do that, the more that voice is going to have dominance. The cure for that voice is other people's voices, is real life other people's voices. The voices of people who love you, the voices of people who want to achieve the same goal that you do, the voices of people who want you to be stronger, the voices of people who will be stronger because you will be stronger. If you do better, they will do better. They want to build you up because you building them up builds them up. You're on the same team. That's what you need in your life. And you know what? Let me just throw this out there. I'm just going to throw this out there. What the heck? What the heck? The chanting thing. Yeah, we chant at our events. Chanting is fucking awesome. Chanting is fucking awesome. People have been chanting for thousands of years. Chanting is one of the best things you can do. Do you know why people in India have been chanting mantras for so long? Do you know why people chant at protest rallies? Do you know why they chant at the Democratic National Convention and the Republican Convention? It's because when groups of people get together and chant together, they feel empowered. They get stronger. It's awesome. It is awesome to be in a crowd of people and together you're chanting things that you believe in is awesome. It is awesome. And that is a cure. That is a cure for that dark, isolated, hateful pessimism that has overtaken so many of us. Chanting is amazing. It is amazing. It is amazing. It's amazing. Chanting is a great thing. It is a great thing. It's a great thing. It's awesome. And if you want that self-destructive internal Satanism in your mind to go away, chanting and being in a group of people who chant is awesome. But, of course, Netflix and Dr. Steve Hassan. Yes, I'm Dr. Steve Hassan, the expert on brainwashing. Dr. Steve Hassan and Netflix and all of that has convinced you that's cult brainwashing. It's mind control. You know, you think there's a reason that they do that? They don't want you in a group. They don't want you at an event chanting with other people. They want you at home so that all the brainwashing comes from this device. That's what they want. They want you all alone in bed with that voice in your head that tells you there's no hope, watching those videos that reinforce that voice in your head that says there's no hope. That's what they want for you. They want you all alone so your brain belongs to them. and they can program you to die so that the useless eaters can die, and humanity, there's one less human on the planet, and that's good because human beings are a cancer. That's what they want. And if you choose to go along with that, that's what you're going to get. If you choose to isolate yourself, you choose to cut yourself off from a group of other people, you choose to allow them to have control of your mind, you choose to let them program you, if you choose to let them spew their negativity into you, if you choose to let them feed the negativity that's already inside of you, if you do that, the outcome will be as expected. But you have the ability to choose not to do that. And I would like to enable you to choose not to do that. I would like to build a community where you can feel like you belong, where people can lift each other up. That's what I would like to do. That's what I would like to do. You know, there was a friend of mine. She grew up, she's from the Caribbean, and she grew up in an evangelical church. And it was an evangelical church in New York City. And every year they had a big Christmas parade. And it was like the big thing this church did is they had a Christmas parade like down the road in the neighborhood that she grew up in. And this woman doesn't agree with the evangelical church anymore. She's kind of an atheist. This woman, you know, she's moved on from it. But the best memories of her childhood, it's not Christmas morning. The best memories of her childhood are the weeks preceding this Christmas parade that happened in her neighborhood, when she and the other Caribbean folks would be working hard on those floats and staying up late into the night, getting everything ready and just putting everything they had into this Christmas parade. And that was one thing that her church did every year, is they had this Christmas parade down the road in New York City, in a working class neighborhood in New York City, not in Manhattan, in one of the boroughs. And her church, when she was a kid, she remembers, you know, going with her parents after school, after work, to go work on some of the floats in the parade. The night before the parade, you know, her parents staying up late at night to get everything in order. You know, her dad putting on a parade marshal vest in order to direct the traffic, and the kids being one place and the Sunday school being over here. And it was like her memories of childhood. The best memories she has is working on that Christmas parade. Because everyone put their all into it. Everyone in her church, they came together and they said, we are going to make this an awesome Christmas parade. And so many moving parts were pulled together, and so much energy was put into it, and so much creativity was put into it. The floats look different every year. It was really the best memory she had, was the weeks in the lead up to that Christmas parade, how suddenly everyone was pumped full of energy so that they could try to make that Christmas parade that year as amazing an experience for the neighborhood, for the community, as they possibly could. And the funny thing is, she doesn't even agree with the church she grew up in anymore. She's not a member of it anymore. She's moved on with her life. She's gone to college. She's studied different things, but those are the memories that stick with her the most. The feeling of community, the feeling of solidarity when they pulled together, and with all their positive energy, they made the annual Christmas parade awesome. Think about that. Because I can think of many things that are similar to that. For example, you know, there's not many of them around anymore. World War II was a long time ago. But whenever I would go and visit my grandparents on either side when I was a kid, very often the photo album came out. And they would show us photographs of themselves in army uniforms in a horrific event known as World War II. World War II was not a good time in human history. A lot of people died. World War II was a pretty awful time in human history. But yet, my grandparents, my grandfather, who had PTSD, I mean, They wanted to take that photo album out and show a picture of them in their uniform and show a picture of them at their base in the Pacific and show a picture of them. And why? Why? Why was there so much pride? Why did they glow when they spoke of the Second World War? Because they were pulling together. Because during World War II, the whole country pulled together to defeat the Nazis, to defeat Hitler, to defeat the Japanese imperialists. And they got that same feeling. They got that same feeling. We're on the same team. We're working together. We're going to achieve our great goal. We are going to sacrifice for a cause. We're going to work together. We're going to achieve something. We're going to pull it off. We're going to work really hard. We're going to lift each other up. We're going to help other people do better. They associated a horrific event called the Second World War with the positive feelings of human solidarity. Human solidarity. Working together for a cause lifted these people up. And World War II is remembered by people who lived through it, people who fought in the Second World War, people who lived through it, remember it being a time when everyone came together. People put aside their differences. The country came together. The world came together. Fascism was defeated. And the Russians and the Chinese and the Americans and the British and the French were all on the same team to defeat the menace of fascism. And people, they had Meatless Tuesday. Nobody ate any meat on Tuesday. And little kids went around collecting tinfoil and scrap metal. And even though it was a horrendous event, and even though it was traumatizing and people had PTSD for the rest of their lives and people lost their loved ones and a lot of awful things happened, people who lived through the Second World War have a memory of the Second World War that is positive because of that human solidarity feeling, because of that joy, right? That is why they have that memory. That's why they have that memory. That is why they have such a memory. And you know, when I read this book, I Change Worlds by Anna Louise Strong, an American who lived in the Soviet Union during the 1930s, describes the 5-year economic plans. She's describing the same thing. She's describing a country pulling together to pull ahead and achieve great victories, raise itself up out of poverty. When I showed you all that video, I won't show it again, of the Soviet women talking about socialism and how amazing it was. When that woman says it seemed like a fairy tale. How could a country where people wore birch bark shoes and were illiterate achieve so much? How is it possible to raise such great construction sites? That's what they were talking about. That's what they were talking about. And that's the cure for that internal Satan. And chanting is part of it. And being around other people and not isolating is part of it. And learning to say no to this thing, especially the toxic voices on this thing, that's a part of it. And I guess I'll conclude my opening remarks for tonight by saying only you can choose to reject the dark forms of Satanism. Only you can do that. I will emphasize what I've said throughout my broadcast tonight, which is I can't do it for you. I can help you do it, but I'm done chasing after people. And if you want the joy of comradeship, if you want to live for a higher purpose, I would like to help you do that. That's all I want. That's all I want. I'm never going to be the biggest guy on YouTube. I'm never going to be the voice of Marxism. I'm never going to be elected to Congress or anything like that. I am here to build a community of solidarity. I want you to be saved in the same way that I was saved. I want you to find the light that I have found. I want you to be cured and find the truth the same way that I have. I want to give speeches and write books that will push you forward and empower you. If you want to take me up on it, if you're able to embrace that part of yourself, great. And if not, that's okay too. But we're heading toward big moments in this country. We're heading toward a moment of reckoning. We're heading toward a moment where it will be very, very, very hard to avoid politics. We're heading toward a big turning point. We're headed toward a decisive moment. And when that moment arises, a lot of people who would normally not be faced with big questions will have history's challenge thrown right into their faces. They will be grabbed by reality. And they'll be told, yes or no. Answer the question now, yes or no. And they're going to be shaken. And they won't be able to escape. And they won't be able to say splunge. They won't be able to say, I don't know. History will grab them by the shoulders. History will grab them by the vest and say, yes or no, yes or no. We need an answer right now. And they will be shaken and they will have to give an answer. They won't be able to dodge the question. They will not be able to say, I'll get back to you on that. They will have to answer the question. And what answer they give in their millions will make a very big difference. And it is my belief that the educational work that the Center for Political Innovation aims to do will lay the foundation for them giving the right answer. And that's why I need your help. And those are my opening remarks for tonight. All right, everybody. Names and locations. I will call you out as I see you. Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. We got Hugo from the Netherlands. We got Edward Allen, Socialism or Barbarism. Names and locations. Oh, Jenny Lynn from Cincinnati is with us. I'm glad you enjoyed the presentation for tonight. We got Adam in Las Vegas. We got Nate in Chicago. We got Sam in West Virginia. We got Klaus Kinski in Germany. Love and Strength from Kentucky. Lauren in Arizona. Natalie from Omaha. We got Ryan in Kansas City. We got Edwin in the Philippines. Very, very, very good. We got St. David, Bermuda. We got Timoshenko in St. Louis. We got Juan in Quito, Ecuador. We got Maddie on the West Coast. And we got Temple City, California. We got West Virginia, Redneck Red. We got Enoch in Australia. Bob Troy in New York. Rice from Adelaide, Australia. Kansas City, Missouri. Joe from San Francisco. Enoch, Australia. Carl in Washington. Kansas City, Missouri, SFT. We got Greensboro, North Carolina. We got Nick from England, from Nottingham, England. We got CJ of the Chicago Workers School. We got Chester, England. Good stuff. We got Ishmael, great motivational speech from Los Angeles. We got Kieran from San Diego, always appreciated. We got Smedley, Jason Hunt in Smedley. We got Tucson, Arizona. Good stuff. Names and locations, folks. Names and locations. I'll call you out. We got Micah from Las Vegas, Cleveland Pirate Alex, Mindanao to Midwest, Tucson. We got Olympia Logic, Mindanao to Midwest. We got Wabacone. We got Caitlin from Chicago. Good to see you, and good to see you as well. We got Fremont, California. We got Cleveland Pirate Alex. Good stuff. It's Jenny Boris in Fremont, California, just to be clear, just to be specific. Very, very good. South Texas. Glad I'm back. Well, I'm glad I'm back too, Carlos. I am glad I'm back. All righty. All right. Names and locations. Names and locations, folks. If folks have more super chats they want me to talk about in the second half of the show, by all means, send them my way. We've got a list here of a few super chats already. But we will get to them. We got Frank Nakai from California. Very, very good. North of California. All right. Well, before we get to super chats, I do just want to remind everyone that Patreon, we are going to have a patrons only stream in the next few days. So if you want to be part of that patrons only stream, please sign up. So we're posting the link in the chat. That would be awesome. And if you want to join or rejoin the Center for Political Innovation, we are having our weekly meetings to talk about our plans for the future. If you want to be in on that and be in on our operations and all of that, by all means, you can join on the CPI website. So we got that going on as well. Good times, good times, good times. So wanted to remind people about that, about the Patreon and about the CPI membership. So there we go. There we go. And if anyone has another super chat, by all means, shoot it my way. And we're going to start answering questions. The first question was from Tom in Detroit. And Tom asked, were the Kamenev-Zinoviev confessions at the Moscow trials legit? Well, I will give an answer to that. The thing is, Anthony's in Fort Worth, Texas. Shout out to you. The thing is, okay, so first of all, let's give the proper context. What were the Moscow trials? So in the Soviet Union, there was a government official, Sergei Kirov, who was assassinated. He was shot, and he was a Communist Party official. He was an ally of Stalin. And I believe it was in like 1934, 1935, Sergei Kirov was assassinated. And the secret police in the Soviet Union began investigating the assassination of Sergei Kirov. And they came to the conclusion that Sergei Kirov was killed as part of a wider conspiracy. And they began uncovering kind of a network of people within the Soviet Communist Party who wanted to bring Trotsky back to power, and who wanted to, and were collaborating with the Nazis in order to do it. And that resulted in the famous Moscow trials of 1937, where Zinoviev and Kamenev confessed to having been part of this conspiracy with Trotsky and with support from Japan and from the Nazis to bring down Stalin and put Trotsky in charge of the Soviet Union. Now, Trotsky insisted he was innocent of this, and the mainstream media at the time said this is just a Stalinist frame-up. And generally the way it's presented, right, is that this was just Stalin going after his political rivals. This was just a political hatchet job. These were Stalinist show trials, etc. I don't know what to believe about it. I'll just be honest with you. I don't know what to believe. And I think that people who, we know that in 1937, they had what was called Yezhovshchina, the Great Terror. And all kinds of innocent people got arrested, got accused of being Nazi spies when they weren't. And all kinds of people who didn't belong in Gulag prisons were sent to them. And that eventually Stalin executed the head of the secret police, Yezhov, for his abuses of power, for persecuting innocent people, for doing what he did. So we know that a lot of things that should not have gone on during 1937 happened. And a lot of innocent people were accused. There's no question about that. That what went on during the Great Terror was wrong. And that even Stalin's biggest defenders say that what happened during those years was wrong. So there is absolutely no reason to act like Stalin did nothing wrong. There's no reason to act like everything was fine and dandy. We can all agree that 1937, the year of the Great Terror, was a nightmare for Soviet society and that a lot of innocent people got hurt. And that's why, first of all, I don't like Gulag jokes. I don't. Because imagine if one of your family members was a good, loyal Communist Party person who got rounded up and thrown in one of those gulags. You wouldn't think those jokes were funny, now would you? And that we shouldn't make light of that. that is a stain. That moment, Yezhovshchina, is a stain on the history of our movement. And, a lot of innocent people got hurt. Okay, now why did they get hurt? Yezhov eventually got executed. Was Stalin the good guy who was trying to stop it? And, there's different interpretations. But we can all agree that those were bad years and a lot of innocent people got hurt. We can all agree on that. But the specific question was, were the confessions from Zinoviev and Kamenev legitimate? And my answer is, I do not know. They could have been forced, right? And that's the standard interpretation, is that they were tortured, that the secret police and Yezhov tortured them. There was threats against their families or whatever, and so they had to get up and give this confession in order to avoid further torture or further retaliation. And this was just a pack of lies to justify what the secret police was doing. That's the standard interpretation. And it could be true. We know that Yezhov was a bad guy. We know there were some bad actors in the secret police and the GPU of the Soviet Union at the time. So it's possible. It's possible. It's very possible. However, it's also possible they were telling the truth. And to think that that there's no possibility that a high-ranking Soviet official could have possibly been plotting to kill Stalin, could have possibly been working with Trotsky. No, you have to admit there was the fact that after Stalin died, Khrushchev came in there and took a dump all over Stalin and basically pandered to the United States by saying that everything that was said about Stalin in U.S. media was true, and that Khrushchev, on top of that, lied in his speech, said things that were ridiculous, that everyone knew were falsehoods, just in the hopes of pandering. That shows that under the surface, there was a, I don't know what you want to call it, a weak or counter-revolutionary current within the Soviet Party, a revisionist current within the Soviet Party that didn't really want to fight the imperialists. That existed. It completely existed. Also, there had been very big divisions in the Soviet Communist Party, and Stalin's triumph over Trotsky, and Trotsky fleeing the country and becoming a professional anti-Soviet agitator, that was very real. And that Trotsky did communicate with Bukharin and Zinoviev. We know that. There are mail receipts that were found, in the Trotsky archives. Trotsky said he never communicated with them, but there are mail receipts. We know Trotsky was in communication. In Germany, when they were in Germany, he was sending them letters in Berlin or something. We don't know what was said in those letters. There was some communication between Trotsky and Zinoviev and Bukharin and Kamenev. There was some communication. We don't know what was said. So it's possible that they could have been telling the truth. It's also possible that they were acting under duress. What is interesting, and what nobody points out, is that the U.S. ambassador to the Soviet Union from the United States, from U.S. imperialism, Joseph Davies, was in the courtroom for those trials. And he was a trial lawyer in America. He had been a trial lawyer before he became the U.S. ambassador to the Soviet Union. And he was convinced that Zinoviev and Kamenev were guilty. So, think about that for a moment, right? If an American trial lawyer who spent years in the American political system, if he's sitting in the courtroom and listening to the confessions and he believes it, that indicates, that might be the case. And there were some others. There were some other prominent intellectuals. I believe there were some prominent British politicians who believed they were guilty. I think Upton Sinclair, if I'm not mistaken, and Sidney and Beatrice Webb, and H.G. Wells, and there were a number of non-communist Western intellectuals who sat in the courtroom and believed they were guilty. Now, could they have been fooled? Of course, right? Russian was not their first language, and and you put on a good show, you coach people in the right way. So we don't know. I will point you toward, Stalin wrote a pamphlet called Mastering Bolshevism. And in his pamphlet, Mastering Bolshevism, he makes this point, which I think is very persuasive. Stalin says that the imperialists, the French imperialists, the American imperialists, the British imperialists, they spend millions of dollars spying on each other. They have whole intelligence agencies. There are French spies in America. There are American spies in France. There are British spies in France. There are French spies in Britain. You know, I mean, all of the imperialist governments are constantly spying on each other, are constantly conspiring against each other, are constantly, you know, maneuvering and manipulating each other's political systems. So it's very, very naive to think that they wouldn't team up to try and manipulate the Soviet political system. And to think that there weren't a huge amount of spies from America, a huge amount of spies from Britain, a huge amount of spies from France and Germany in the Soviet Union is extremely naive. And to think that when the Soviet system, the Soviet socialism, was about overthrowing imperialism, it was against all of those Western imperialists, to think that they wouldn't combine their efforts to conspire within the Soviet Union to bring down Stalin, that they wouldn't bring Trotsky into their conspiracy if they could, is extremely naive. It's very possible. It's very possible that, yes, Zinoviev and Kamenev were guilty of working with the Western imperialists and with Trotsky to try and overthrow Stalin. It's very possible. Not saying it happened, though, because I don't know, and I'm not convinced. Trotsky sending letters, that's not proof of anything, right? That's just proof that Trotsky sent somebody a letter. We don't know, right? You know, and their confessions, people have criticized it. There's like a hotel, and it's not the right name of the hotel, and, you know, we don't know. And we know that the secret police in Russia was doing a lot of evil things during that time. Now, that's true, right? That the Yezhov, the secret police under Stalin, did a lot of very bad things, and a lot of people were hurt. And eventually, Yezhov, the head of the secret police, got the death penalty for all the evil things he did to people during that time period. So I don't know. And it's interesting. I'm giving you, Tom, and I don't know. But I'm urging people to change the way they think about the period, because the standard understanding that people have of that period is that evil Stalin was just maneuvering to get rid of all of his political rivals. And that is such a naive way of understanding. That's such a naive way of understanding that time period, right? Again, why wouldn't there be a huge network of U.S. spies in the Soviet Union? Why wouldn't there be a whole network of German spies in the Soviet Union? Why wouldn't they try to recruit Trotsky, a former Soviet official who had a falling out with Stalin, to be part of their spy? There's nothing incredible about it. You know, I mean, you know, is it thoroughly proven? Do we have 100% proof that it happened? No. But is it possible? Yeah, it's very possible that. I mean, look, how many coups has the U.S. government pulled off? They've overthrew the government of Chile in 1973. They overthrew the government of Argentina in the 80s. I mean, all over the world, they conspire and they pull off coups and they overthrow governments and they engage in covert operations. So why in the world would you think that the late 30s in the Soviet Union, nothing happened? Yeah, you can be sure that in the lead up to World War II, when the Soviet Union was riding high, was the leader of the global communist movement, and World War II was on the horizon, you can be absolutely sure that American intelligence and British intelligence and French intelligence and German intelligence and Japanese intelligence and Italian intelligence, they were all over the Soviet Union doing all kinds of shit. You can be sure of that. And the Soviet security services had a big job on their hands of trying to keep the U.S. imperialists and the British imperialists and the French imperialists and the German imperialists from pulling off some kind of military coup and overthrowing socialism in the Soviet Union, right? And to think that some kind of conspiracy couldn't penetrate the high levels of the Soviet Communist Party, that is so naive. It's so naive, right? It's possible. It's a very conceivable story, but I don't see solid proof. And I also know that a lot of bad things happened. And one thing I will say is, please stop it with the Gulag jokes. Please, I'm begging you, stop it with the Gulag jokes. Stop it with the Stalin did nothing wrong. All right? Trust me. Bad shit happened in those times. Good, dedicated communists got persecuted and punished. You know? And there's no, and if you make light of all of that, if you pretend that none of that stuff ever happened, eventually you're going to get to a moment where you realize that shit happened and you're going to turn against communism. Right? Remember the God that failed. Right? If you think the Soviet Union was infallible and they didn't do anything wrong and they didn't have problems, eventually you're going to have this moment where you realize they fucked up badly. And then you're going to turn against all of it. Right? And that's the problem. Don't have a light switch mentality. Do not have a light switch mentality. Don't fall into the trap of blindly defending and refusing to admit the flaws that existed there. Because you're gonna face a world of hurt, right? You're gonna face a world of hurt if you get into that mindset. I'm telling you, right? You know, if you think Cuba is heaven on earth, when you go to Cuba and you see the hardship that they endure, and you see various things that Cuba has problems with, you're going to turn against communism. But if you can be honest and say Cuba has had great achievements, but they also have some shortcomings, you can stay loyal to the project. And it's really, really, really important, really important not to fall into the mindset where we don't admit there were problems. There were problems during those years. A lot of innocent people got hurt. The gulags were a nightmare. The Great Terror was a nightmare. What the secret police were doing during the Great Terror, Yezhovshchina, was a nightmare. I'm repeating myself, but it's important. So we must view this with nuance. And at the end of the day, were Kamenev and Zinoviev actually guilty? I don't know. I don't know. They could have been. And if someone tries to tell you, let me repeat, if someone tries to tell you that there's no possible way that high-ranking members of the Soviet Communist Party could have been plotting against the Soviet Union, if someone tells you that, ask them what happened in 1991. The fall of the Soviet Union was high-ranking members of the Soviet Communist Party working against the Soviet Union. Ask them what happened in 1956 with Khrushchev's secret speech. That was the highest-ranking member of the Soviet government working against the interests of the Soviet Union. If you think that the idea that a very high-ranking Soviet leader couldn't possibly have been recruited by the West, couldn't possibly have been trying to undermine the Soviet Union from within, you're very, very, very naive. So that's why I can't give you a real answer. That's why I can't give you a real answer, because I don't know. And my defense of the Soviet Union is not based on Stalin being, so great and infallible, because he wasn't. Stalin made a lot of mistakes. Stalin did the best he could under those circumstances. Stalin, was given a task that it would be like, you can't imagine the amount of responsibility that fell on that man's shoulders during World War II, during the industrialization. You can't imagine any of that. That said, there are things that I'm sure Stalin would have done differently if he did it again. Stalin had problems, and what happened after Stalin's death, the fact that Khrushchev was able to get in there and throw him under the bus the way he did, the fact that in the 60s and 70s, the Soviet Union started coming apart, all of this points to the fact that there were things Stalin clearly did wrong. Clearly. The reason I defend the Soviet Union is not based on Stalin's personality or thinking Stalin was infallible. That's not it. I defend the Soviet Union because they defeated the Nazis, because they invented space travel, because they lifted millions of people out of poverty, because they wiped out illiteracy, because they turned an agrarian country into an industrial country very rapidly, because they supported the Black freedom struggle in America, because they supported the labor movement in America and got us the 8-hour workday and the minimum wage and Social Security, because they built a global anti-fascist movement that saved humanity from the Nazis, because they empowered women, because they advanced science and they invented LED lights. And I praise the Soviet Union for building infrastructure in Libya and building infrastructure in Egypt and raising people all over the world out of poverty and helping start China on the course of building. The achievements of the Soviet Union are massive, massive. What was achieved during the Soviet years is so huge and so utterly amazing. When a whole country becomes a superpower overnight, when a country is leading a global movement that pushes racial equality and fights for the rights of the working class and defeats the Nazis and advances the science. The huge levels of achievement that the Soviet Union had cannot be underestimated. That is what I defend. I don't have to defend the other stuff. I don't have to defend the political repression. There's no reason. There is absolutely no reason that I can't acknowledge the good and criticize the bad. There's no reason I can't do that. There is absolutely no reason I can't do that. I can say that the persecution of Christians, the suppression of the church in the Soviet Union was wrong. And as a Christian, I can say that big mistakes were made in how they dealt with Christians. I can say that. I can say that, the Soviet Union had an issue with consumer goods. They were very good at heavy industry. They were not good at consumer technology. I can say that, and that there can be a nuanced approach to these things. Look, well, anyway, I could go on a whole rant about Thanksgiving and stuff like that. I'm not going to do that. But if people have more super chats, by all means, throw them my way. So the next question we've got is, where can I find a translation of Xi Jinping's books? I have them right here. Right here. I've got volumes 2 and 3. I gave volume 1 to a friend, Governance of China by Xi Jinping. Great stuff. This guy is definitely a communist. This guy is definitely a Marxist. Xi Jinping is definitely a communist. Anyone who tells you China's socialist in name only, China's a neoliberal country, has no clue what they're talking about. This guy is definitely a commie. This is a comrade here. Right? Read what he has to say. He absolutely is. But I got him on Amazon. That's where I got him. I got him from Amazon.com. That's where I got those, but you can order them. There's China Books. There's a publishing house in the United States that publishes China's publications. It's like ChinaBooks.com, I think. The ChinaBooks.com. Is that what it is? Let me see. My internet is being slow. I'm broadcasting to all of you, but there's a publisher that publishes Chinese government publications in the United States. That's where you can buy the Little Red Book from. That's where the Little Red Book, you can buy the Little Red Book, the actual Little Red one. You can buy it from China Books. That's generally the publisher. So if you want to get it directly from the publisher, you can probably do that if you don't want to patronize Amazon. But yes, it is ChinaBooks.com. ChinaBooks.com. America's #1 source for publications about China since 1960. Yeah, that's ChinaBooks.com. That is where you can buy Chinese government publications. ChinaBooks.com. So if you're looking to buy the writings of Xi Jinping, that's the place to get it. ChinaBooks.com. I was right. It took forever to load, but there you go. And that's the place. ChinaBooks.com. So yeah, that is directly from the publisher. If you don't want to go through Amazon like I did, you can just go directly to the publisher. But there you go. So there you go. And yes, Xi's books are sold on Amazon. That's where I got mine. I got my copies from Amazon.com. So there you go. All right. Thoughts on Republicans winning control of the House? Well, it'll be interesting to see the Hunter Biden scandal, what kind of investigations they're able to do about that. Trump was subject to all kinds of investigations when he was president. And, so it'll be interesting to see what they're able to do when they start investigating the Democrats. Why did Nancy Pelosi step down? That's interesting. Is it just because she's old? Is that what's going on? And who's going to replace Nancy Pelosi? That's interesting to me. We all hoped that with the squad or, they would do something, but the Democrats have been in there and they've made it abundantly clear. All they're going to do is warmonger and wokeify. They're not actually going to make things better for the country. Marjorie Taylor Greene has promised to investigate the aid to Ukraine and where the aid to Ukraine has gone, to see if there's been actually money going into the hands of terrorists and others. And I think that's a great thing to do. So there you go. We'll see. The Biden administration will use this as an excuse, though. They promise all kinds, Biden, his speech that he gave, right after taking office, his joint address, it wasn't a State of the Union. It had a lot of good promises in it. And he didn't do any of it. And they had the House and the Senate, and they didn't do any of it. Well, now they don't have the House. So now their reason that they're not going to rebuild the infrastructure, their reason they're not going to, pass the PRO Act and protect the unions, their reason's going to be, we lost the House. We lost the House, Well, they didn't want to do it. Don't forget that they didn't want to do it. They really didn't want to do it. That's why they didn't do it. But now they had the excuse. Democrats love this. They promise the stars and the moon, and then they don't deliver, and then they lose, and the Republicans take it back, and they say, oh, we can't do it now. We lost. And it's like during the Obama administration, they had the control of the House and Senate. They didn't do anything, and during the, they brought us the Obamacare nightmare, no public option, nothing. And then the Republicans, retook control, and then their excuse for the rest of the Obama years is, oh, the Republicans blocked it, right? So now Biden, he will have the excuse, oh, it's the Republicans' fault. Oh, it's the Republicans' fault. And so I'm tired of them. Not a big fan of the Democrats. I mean, the Republicans are pretty awful also, but they're an insurgent force. They're against the establishment to some degree or other. The establishment is afraid of them, and so that makes them in some ways better. And they are making a populist appeal. They are trying to build some kind of mass movement. They're against the wars. They're against the FBI. And that's one good thing about them. But it's fake in a lot of ways. We know it's fake. So there you go. Missionaries in the national security state. Yeah, well, that's a reality, right? Is that, that many people point to the fact that Mormonism started rapidly expanding in the 70s when the Mormons started collaborating with the FBI and CIA, and that Mormon missionaries around the world, as well as many other Christian missionaries around the world, do work with American intelligence. That's a reality that many people have pointed to. It's not a secret. It's really not a secret. The same for the Peace Corps, the same for a lot of these nonprofits. They talk about the nonprofit industrial complex and the NGO apparatus, the National Endowment for Democracy, and all of that. There's a lot of the murky intelligence world. Christian missionaries are used that way. Look, a great example. All right, I grew up in an area in Ohio when I was a kid. There were a lot of Mennonites that I grew up around. And many of these Mennonites would brag, like teachers I had, people in my town would brag that when they were in college, they helped smuggle Bibles into East Germany, or they helped smuggle Bibles into the Soviet Union. They weren't smuggling Bibles. Okay. They thought they were smuggling Bibles. They were smuggling something else. I don't know what, but I would hear that, in the 80s, when I was when I was in college, I was smuggling Bibles into the Soviet. No, you weren't. You weren't smuggling Bibles. They had Bibles in the Soviet Union. They had Stalin legalized the Russian Orthodox Church during World War II. They had Bibles in the Soviet Union. They had Bibles in East Germany. You weren't smuggling Bibles. You were smuggling something else. And it's kind of sad that they don't realize that. They were obviously being used by somebody, and they don't know that. I mean, it's like they're, useful idiots. You know what I mean? They don't know any better. But they had Bibles in East Germany. The Bible is a literary text. If you're going to understand literature in Europe, and you can't read Goethe without knowing the Bible. In German history and German literature class, they're like, there were plenty of Bibles in the former Soviet Union, plenty of Bibles in East Germany. And these people saying, oh, we were smuggling Bibles into the Soviet Union. You were being used you were doing grunt work for American intelligence. That's what you were doing. They were using you to do something. You were smuggling something else. You were delivering a message. You were, there was, in one of those Bibles, there was cash. You were doing something. You were doing something for American intelligence. And it's, and that goes to show you, it's, people think that like the CIA is just this invisible organization that, but there's, the media, American intelligence spends a long time crafting the media, pushing the media to report things the way they want. Read about Project Mockingbird. It was admitted by the Washington Post that the way Anderson Cooper got his job at CNN was with the CIA. Somebody who used to work at the Native American Museum at the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. They were on the board of it for a while. And they told me, they said, it's all CIA agents. And I was like, really? And they said, yeah. I'm just like, why in the world would the CIA be running the Native American Museum, right? Of all the things to do. Well, think about it, though. Native Americans and the treatment of Native Americans is one of the main ways people criticize the United States. The fact that we murdered all the Native Americans, there was genocide of the Native people. So if you have a big museum in Washington, D.C., that people from all over the world, tourists from all over the world go to learn about Native Americans, one of the main things that people demonize the United States for, wouldn't it be in the interest of American intelligence to help control that narrative? Think about it. It actually makes a lot of sense, right? I mean, and that the fact that, if you're American intelligence probably spends a lot of time managing the narrative around Native Americans very carefully. For example, the top Native American scholar in the United States is Ward Churchill, who is an anarchist, who is a huge critic of American capitalism, but he's also a CIA asset. During the 1980s, he had the job of rallying Native Americans to support the Contras in Nicaragua. And he and Russell Means, they went around and they were working directly with the CIA to go around and convince people that were sympathetic to Native Americans that they had to support the terrorist Contras of Nicaragua. And Ward Churchill wrote articles about it. And he was, and you can read, there's actually a memoir of the Contra War written by a Native American communist professor. She wrote about this. Ward Churchill's main job, he was going around and he and not Leonard Peltier, I'm so sorry, Russell Means. Leonard Peltier is a political prisoner. But Russell Means and Ward Churchill were going around rallying American leftists to support the Contras of Nicaragua. That's what they were doing. So there you go. So to think that American intelligence doesn't have its dirty hands all over the place, whether it's, in academia or in museums or crafting the media, and to think that these people, these Mennonites that, when I was in college, I used to smuggle Bibles into the Soviet Union. No, you didn't. And the fact that you're so naive and you think that's what you're doing shows you were perfect for the job. There was no danger. If the Soviets arrested you and you would just go, I was smuggling Bibles. I never did it. You'd be perfect for the job, that's the sad thing, right? We're always told that it's the communists that talk about useful idiots. Well, a lot of people are useful idiots of American intelligence. I'll tell you that much. Look at BreadTube, right? Vosh is the biggest useful idiot I've ever seen. No one's more of an idiot than Vosh, and he's a very useful idiot for American imperialism. Like, the guy's political understanding is at the level of there's Nazis and then there's everyone else. There's people I like and Nazis. He can't have a debate for more than 2 minutes without comparing someone to a Nazi, because that's as far as his political understanding goes. It's just everyone's a Nazi and there's all these Nazis everywhere. He is a liberal Zionist. And when he was a child, they traumatized him and they convinced him that, oh my God, all of humanity are just bloodthirsty anti-Semites who want to murder all the Jews. And they just traumatized. It was pounded into his head that, all of humanity, all the black people, all the people in the Midwest and Ohio and Pennsylvania and Kentucky, and all the Asian people and all the Latinos and all the Arabs, all of them just sit around all day going, kill the Jews, kill the Jews. And he believes that. In his mind, he has been indoctrinated to believe that the bulk of humanity, all the bulk of humanity does is sit around all day long going, kill the Jews, kill the Jews. And that's what he believes. He's arguing with a Pan-Africanist about land redistribution. He's like, well, that sounds an awful lot like a Nazi, because deep down she must be a Nazi, because that's what he learned when he was a child, right? And he's arguing with me, and I'm defending Langston Hughes and say, oh, you sound like a Nazi. It's like everyone must be a Nazi, because his mindset, he has this mindset where the bulk of humanity, deep down, we're all Nazis. And we're all just, that's what, and seriously, you listen to his fans, they think I'm on here. It's funny, I'm on here quoting Marx, talking about the heroic anti-fascist struggles, the role of the Soviet Union in defeating racism. But his fans, he's convinced them. And a lot of the people who are his biggest fans think that, you guys have been watching me here for almost 3 hours, but they think that all I do on these streams is jump up and down and say, kill the Jews, kill the Jews, kill the Jews. We don't do that. We don't have anything against Jews, you fucking idiot. No one here has anything against Jews, right? We're quoting Marx. We're quoting Albert Einstein. We're quoting Lenin. we're supporting anti-fascism. We don't have anything against the Jews. All right. We're not on here screaming against Jews. We don't hate Jews. We do not deny the Holocaust. We admit that the Holocaust was one of the most horrendous events in history. I mean, we're not on here. No one on here has anything against the Jews. There's nothing anti-Semitic about what we're saying here. We're defending an ideology that has been the most anti-fascist, anti-Nazi ideology in history. Like, if there's anyone who's not Nazi, it's tankies and Stalinists, for Christ's sakes. However, Jabba the Vosh and all of them, they're convinced that all we do on here is jump up and down and kill. They think it's Borat. They think we're Borat on here. It's what they think. That's what they believe, right? Somebody told me, I will never forget the day I was told by an elderly woman, not an elderly woman, an older woman, informed me that, quote, everyone in Ohio thinks that Jews have horns and tails. I thought, I have never met anyone in my life who is stupid enough to think that an ethnic group has horns and tails. Like, how stupid would one have to be to literally believe that members of an entire ethno-religious group are born with horns and tails and look like devils? No one believes that. But no, she insisted. She knew for a fact that everyone I grew up around, my whole town, my whole school, everyone from my whole state believes that Jews are like deformed devils. No, we don't. We don't believe that. And that is the liberal Zionist mindset. All of humanity is in this vast conspiracy to persecute Jews. We all just sit around and foam at the mouth with anti-Semitism all day long. Anti-Semitism is an awful thing. The pogroms were horrendous. The Holocaust was horrendous. Anti-Semitism of any kind, ethnic bigotry, persecuting people on the basis of their race and their religion is awful. And I don't understand. I know that there's a huge amount of historical trauma that gets passed down from generation to generation that causes people to think this way. Okay? And I should be more sensitive, honestly. My resentment and my anger about being targeted and called a Nazi when I'm clearly not one gets me fired up. So I should be more sensitive to this. I can do better. I can do better about being more sensitive to this. But it gets me really, really annoyed. This mindset that, it's just like, I'm sorry, but it's like everyone who criticizes Israel is not secretly, heiling Hitler in their bed before they go to bed every night. Okay. Every black person, who likes Kanye West is not, secretly part of a ring of people that, it's just like the level of delusion that goes into this mindset. And then you see that Vosh is like the walking incarnation of it. He cannot have a political debate without trying to reveal that somebody's a Nazi. And not everyone's a Nazi. There are Nazis in this world. Yes. Richard Spencer, that's a Nazi. The American Nazi Party, those are Nazis. Stormfront, Nazis, right? There are Nazis in this world. But then there's a lot of people that are not Nazis. There's a lot of people who criticize Israel who aren't Nazis. There's a lot of people who disagree with Vosh that aren't Nazis. There's a lot of people that disagree with American mainstream capitalism that aren't Nazis. There's a lot of people who don't vote for Democrats and aren't Nazis. There's a lot of Trump supporters who aren't Nazis, and say the overwhelming majority, like 99% of Trump supporters are not Nazis. It's like, and it's just, but no, this group of the liberal Zionists, they have it in their head that all, like, the bulk of humanity, we're all just sitting around, dancing around, jumping up and down about how much we want to kill Jews all day. And, it's like, they think we're all Borat. That's what they think. They think we're Borat. And it's offensive, and it's not a good way to think. And I don't appreciate how much they get away with it, right? Mainstream media does a lot to cover up this sentiment, the Zionist sentiment, this belief that the bulk of humanity are all bloodthirsty anti-Semites, that there's you can read the secret code words and all of this and that. I've got Jewish friends. I've made mistakes on the anti-Semitism question before, and I apologize to the Jewish community for it. But it's like the bulk of humanity are not sitting around all day hating Jews. Like, it's just not what we do. We live our lives. We go to the grocery store. You know, we go to a basketball game. We watch TV. We go to work. We go home. The bulk of humanity are not sitting around all day espousing anti-Semitism, you know, and that mindset is very toxic. It's a very toxic mindset. I think Kanye West, not Kanye West. See, here I am. I'm slipping names. I'm saying the wrong thing. Not Kanye West. Scratch Kanye West. I think what's his name? Dave Chappelle. That's what he was joking about in his edgy comedy routine that he did on Saturday Night Live this week. That was what he was getting at, right? That's what he was alluding to. And I think there's a lot of people who realize that kind of mentality is, I mean, it's just not realistic. I mean, yes, anti-Semitism should be denounced. Yes, hatred for anyone on the basis of their race or their religion or their heritage should be opposed. Yes, right? And Kanye West, no, what he's saying is unacceptable, right? Blaming cancel culture on one ethnic group, preaching. I mean, Kanye West is out of bounds. I do not approve of Kanye West and the way he talks, you know? And I admit there have been times where I've said things that I shouldn't have said. And Jewish friends have come to me and said, Caleb, you shouldn't talk that way. And I've retracted things that I've written. I've made mistakes on that question, and I'm willing to admit that. I am capable of admitting when I make mistakes, folks. I'm actually capable of doing that. And if you think that I am infallible, or you think I'm someone who's not capable of making mistakes, or if you want me to be that, you're looking at the wrong guy. I make mistakes. I get things wrong sometimes. And if you think I'm infallible, if you think I don't make mistakes, you're in for a big surprise, because I have made mistakes before, but my heart's in the right place. When I make mistakes, I do the best I can to make them right. So there we go. Antonio Gramsci and his theories. Well, Gramsci was the leader of the Italian Communist Party. Benito Mussolini became the fascist dictator of Italy and put him in prison. And in prison, he wrote his famous prison notebooks, which I will say, this is a piece of crap. Not the writing. The book itself, I mean, whatever. It's Gramsci. This edition that I bought from Amazon is a piece of crap. It doesn't have fucking page numbers. Do you see how long this book is? This book is huge. And there's no fucking page numbers in it. I can't find what I'm looking for. Do you know how long? There's a table of contents in here that goes on for pages, and there's no fucking page numbers in it. I'm furious. Amazon owes me money for this shit. Like, it's a 4-page. Look how long this table of contents is. No page numbers. There are no page numbers on any of these pages. How am I supposed to read this book? I mean, it's infuriating. Jeff Bezos, I bought the prison notebooks of Antonio Gramsci from Jeff Bezos from Amazon, and it's like 1,000 pages with no page numbers. That is a crime against humanity. How am I supposed to read this book? Does he think I'm going to read it cover to cover? It's a bunch of short little essays and articles. So infuriating. So infuriating. And a lot of the Amazon books are of this quality. I think that's why our edition of the Green Book that the Center for Political Innovation published. We published the first edition of the Green Book by Muammar Gaddafi. And that was our first book. We published our own edition of it. I wrote the introduction. And it has sold amazingly. And you know why? You know why it sold? I hate to say it's because it has fucking page numbers. It's got page numbers in it. Gavin was very helpful. He got the original graphic, made sure we had the correct graphic of the legislative body, the People's Council body, and I wrote an introduction to it. And that book has sold a lot of copies, well over 1,000, almost 2,000. I think it's over 2,000 at this point. And I realize now there's like 5 versions of the Green Book on Amazon, and most of them don't have fucking page numbers. Most of them, somebody just cut and pasted. Someone just cut and pasted. Sold it on Amazon, and they cost about the same as ours does, but ours is laid out nicely. It's got a good cover on it. It's got accurate graphics, and it has fucking page numbers. Holy shit. Holy shit. You know, Yeah, I mean, page numbers, people. But anyway, Gramsci, I've explained this before. He was the Italian Marxist leader of the Communist Party. They threw him in prison. In prison, he started writing a lot of essays about culture, etc. And he had to write them in code. He couldn't use Marxist language because the prison censors would censor it, right? And so because of the fact that the prison censors would censor it, he didn't use the word like Marxism. He's called it the theory of praxis. He wrote a lot of things like that, right? The Center for Page Number Innovation. Exactly. Thank you very much for that reestablishment. I appreciate it. That's a good joke. That's a good. But but anyway, I mean, he wrote a lot of theories about culture and how the culture struggle is carried out. He wrote about that, and because it's not written in Marxist language, the CIA started trying to popularize it. That was part of the whole cultural Marxism push. And in fact, it was Pete Buttigieg's father, who was the president of the International Gramsci Society. And they started pushing Gramsci. His notebooks were translated and published in the 1960s and 70s. They became a big part of the cultural Marxism, Frankfurt School, synthetic left thing. They became a big part of that. So that's where it came from. So that's Gramsci. All right, next question. Additional comments about 18th Brumaire, besides RedTube being a counter gang. Well, 18th Brumaire by Karl Marx is a very important book. Let me see where I've got my edition of it. This is my edition of it. It's Amazon. This one actually does have page numbers. Look at that. Page numbers. It's an Amazon edition of it. It's a very important pamphlet. It's really hard to read. I have read it many, many times because it's important to my concept of Bonapartism and divisions in the ruling class. But the problem with it is that you're expected to know who everyone is, right? And you don't. We're not living in France, right? I mean, it would be like if someone wrote a pamphlet now, they're not going to explain who the Democrats are. They're not going to explain who the Republicans are. They're not going to explain who Trump is. You're supposed to know that. Well, he wrote this in 1852 in France, and you're supposed to know who all these people are. And you don't, right? So it's best if you're going to read it, open Wikipedia first, and, get a sense of who all the people are. And what's interesting is the other thing, and this is very interesting, is before the coup, he's writing about the coup where Louis Bonaparte seized power in a coup in 1851. And that's the title, the 18th Brumaire of Louis Bonaparte. 18 Brumaire was the day Napoleon seized power. And then Louis Bonaparte, it was like first time is tragedy, second time is farce. Louis Bonaparte seized power, right? And, Louis Bonaparte, he became like the emperor of France. And, he was fighting against the monarchists, the party of order and the conservative monarchists, the Bourbons, right? And so he comes in and he kicks them out of the country, and he believes in historical progress and infrastructure and the ideals of the French Revolution. It's supposed to be this like progressive military dictatorship. But what Marx talks about, and there's not much written about this, is that like before the coup, there had been a big socialist working class uprising. And Marx spends a lot of times talking about that. Like the coup, the like pseudo-progressive Bonapartist coup by Louis Bonaparte was preceded by a big socialist working class uprising in Paris, right? And it was the ruling class trying to like stabilize society to prevent, having a full-on socialist revolution. And Marx talks about that. And he's looking at the coup by Louis Bonaparte in that same manner. And he spends a lot of pages calling Louis Bonaparte a clown. That's the main thing. And there are aspects of Louis Bonaparte that kind of remind you of Donald Trump, these political gimmicks that he engaged in. For example, this was, 1849, 1850 that this was happening. And one big thing in the Louis Bonaparte pamphlet that you have to look at Wikipedia, you will not know what the fuck he's talking about. I looked this up and it made sense to me when I was going through the pamphlet. I didn't know this but I did know what was going on in America in 1849. What was happening in America? Why is it we have the San Francisco 49ers, right? Right. And why is there My Darling Clementine? In a cavern by a canyon, excavating for a mine, was a miner, 49er, and his darling Clementine. What was happening in 1849? 1849 was the California gold rush. I never thought to connect it, but Marx talks about in here, Louis Bonaparte, in order to make himself popular, raffled off gold bars. He had these like lotteries where he raffled off gold from California, and he paid people to go to California. He raffled off the chance to go to California and get gold. And he did these like weird populist political gimmicks that were illegal. It was illegal in France at that time. You could not. It was against the law to have a lottery, to have a raffle. But he did it anyway. Right. And that was one of the things that Louis Bonaparte, as this populist Bonapartist, did, is he had these raffles for these gold bars. Well, Marx talks about how Louis Bonaparte was kind of a clown, right? He was kind of a clown. And he was a horny old guy, who was into sex or whatever. He was a horny old guy who, did political gimmicks and was always, doing stupid gimmicky things like raffling off gold bars. And he was a demagogue, and he was good at getting a lot of attention for himself in the press. He did a lot of like publicity stunts, and he was the nephew of Louis Bonaparte. And he talks about this, and Marx spends a lot of time in the pamphlet just talking about how Louis Bonaparte, in order to like build kind of a cult of personality so that he could make himself the military dictator, he did a lot of gimmicks, and they're all very shallow. And Marx spends a lot of time in the pamphlet just kind of talking about what a clown Louis Bonaparte is. He also spends a lot of time, and this is important, talking about how the bourgeoisie of France hated Louis Bonaparte, couldn't stand Louis Bonaparte, because he was doing to them what they had done to the socialists. That's what he talks about, how, the capitalist press of France was always screaming about, oh my God, we can't have, the capitalist press was saying we got to outlaw socialists, we got to outlaw Marxists. Well, Louis Bonaparte comes in and he's outlawing mainstream media, right? That they're always, and that the bourgeoisie was all for the repression of the socialist organizers and revolutionaries. But then when this Bonapartist came in to try and get capitalism in order with heavy-handed repression of his own class, they started screaming about freedom. And he talked about that, how the bourgeoisie, they reacted to Louis Bonaparte. He was coming in to try and stabilize their system. They reacted to him like he was this awful tyrant, right? And he spends many paragraphs talking to the irony of this, that, right, like the bourgeoisie loves heavy-handed political repression against communists. But when somebody, even from their own class, comes in and starts trying to bring order to French society by kicking around the capitalist class, they scream bloody murder. And he spends paragraphs talking about that. So yeah, that's some of the highlights of the pamphlet. One of the problems with the pamphlet is Marx is screaming when he's writing this. This is agitator Marx. This is the early Marx, right? This is Marx. He wrote the Communist Manifesto in 1848. He wrote this in 1852. And he's writing like he's yelling, like he's an agitator, right? And it can be a little bit overwhelming, right? Marx must have calmed down as he wrote older. He wrote a much calmer tone. But the tone through which he writes that pamphlet, he's like yelling at you, right? He's like, whoa, 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 whoa. It's a little bit bombastic, I will say. Marx had a lot of coffee the day he wrote it. Let me put it that way. But it makes a lot more sense if you Google the political context. You learn about the Party of Order. You learn about the Bourbons. You learn about, the socialist uprising. You learn about the gold bar auction, etc. All right. Did Luther purchase hell from the Pope? I mean, no, I don't know what you're getting at there, right? One of Martin Luther's big objections to the Roman Catholic Church was the selling of indulgences. The fact that one could buy forgiveness for one's sins with money. That was one thing that Martin Luther objected to. So perhaps that question is in reference to that. I'm not a Lutheran. I don't ascribe to Lutheran theology very much. I know about Martin Luther was a Roman Catholic priest, and he got fed up with the Vatican, so he nailed his thesis to the door of the church, launched the Protestant Reformation. It was a big moment that Martin Luther was, and he defended feudalism. He was not opposed to feudalism, and he brutally suppressed the peasant uprisings. And he published a lot of hateful anti-Semitism, but he kind of started the ball rolling of overturning feudalism by breaking the power of the Catholic Church in Germany. That was Martin Luther. And he was a pivotal figure in the bourgeois revolution. Even though he opposed the bourgeois revolution, he opened the door a crack by criticizing feudalism and the main institution of feudalism, the Catholic Church. He was against the peasant uprisings. He was a defender of the feudal order, but he was criticizing the Vatican. And he opened the door to breaking the power of the Vatican. What else do I know about Martin Luther? It's funny, I was baptized Lutheran, but I didn't grow up as a Lutheran. My family, we switched to a congregational church, United Church of Christ, which comes out of it's the congregational tradition, right? Congregational and Swiss Reform. And that's the mainline Protestantism that I grew up with. But, my grandmother was a Lutheran. She was actually like a very active Lutheran. She was part of something called the Luther League, which is like, you have like members of Lutheran churches. Then you have this like group called the Luther League, which is like active Lutherans. So she was very, very Lutheran. And I used to read the Lutheran magazine that she would have around the house. But I don't know that much about Martin Luther, honestly. I didn't grow up with it. Didn't Martin Luther write "A Mighty Fortress Is Our God"? Isn't that what Martin Luther wrote? Didn't he write that hymn, right? Wasn't that kind of like one of his main, did he write that? He's credited with writing it by some people. I don't know if he actually wrote it, but I'm not a Lutheran and I don't know in detail. When you're asking me, did he purchase hell from the Pope? I don't know what that means. Maybe if I was more familiar with the history of the Protestant Reformation, I would know what that means. I just don't know what it means. But listen, folks, it's been a great stream. We've been on here for well over 3 hours, and I really enjoy it. I like answering your questions. I do want to remind people that if you want to continue to support the work that we do, by all means, go sign up on the Patreon. If you want to be involved in the work that we are doing, by all means, join the Center for Political Innovation. We've been having our weekly meetings. So by all means, sign up. There we go. Yeah, good times, folks. Good times. We're going to keep going, and come hell and high water, we're going to keep going. And, it was great. Today, let me just tell you this before I go. And if you have any more super chats, throw them my way, but I'll just kind of tell you about my day today. I woke up, I checked with work. Today was a pretty light day in terms of work. I'm working from home. I took care of a few things I needed to take care of. And then I got on social media and I just started feeling very, very negative. I just felt bad. I just started feeling bad. But I went and I exercised. And then I went and got something to eat. And I put on some speeches that I listened to. Suddenly I was feeling it. And I thought, I am going to give a great talk tonight, right? I have got a lot to say. And I am like, oh my God, get me on YouTube tonight. Oh my God, I am going to kick ass. And then I had stuff to do later in the evening. I was covering, I was doing some reporting. And then I got on here and it was weird. It was like, I woke up, the social media was just corroding my mind and I was feeling bad, took care of some work stuff, went and exercised, was still kind of feeling gross, went and got some food. And all of a sudden I felt like me again. I felt pumped. I was ready to fight. And I did some more work this evening, and then I got on here, and that speech tonight, wow, that was where I was at when I finally ate my full meal. I eat apples. I'm trying to eat more apples because apples, one, they give you energy. Two, they're healthy for you. You know, it's better than eating like donuts or something. So in the morning, I've been waking up and I have a bunch of apples in the refrigerator, and I eat apples because I've heard that they give you energy and such. But an apple is not a full meal, right? But I try to work out before I have a full meal because you don't want to work out on a full stomach, right? So I waited too long to work out. That's what I took from today. I should have worked out sooner. I shouldn't have sat around the house and been on social media. I was arguing with that guy, Unholy Rome, who thinks I'm an idiot because I realized that Marx, supported Lincoln. U.S.-backed insurgency in Myanmar. The thing is, Myanmar is a military junta that is aligned with China. That's what it is. And under the Obama administration, the U.S. government was able to maneuver to kind of open up Myanmar and allow more U.S. influence in Myanmar. However, that has led to instability in the country, disagreements between Muslims, etc. So now Myanmar is once again a military regime in response to the results of the openness that the United States brought in. When the Obama administration pushed openness on Myanmar, it didn't make things better. It brought division, ethnic division, instability, this insurgency. So now we have the military junta back in power. And I think that's the important thing to take away from that. Obviously I want more open societies, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, but the military junta coming back in there, that was a response to the instability that resulted from the USA opening up Myanmar and bringing in its forces that sow chaos and instability. I mean, if you look at Libya, you look at Syria, I mean, that's what, the USA, when it says it wants open societies, it wants deconstruction. And it's kind of like what they're doing over here. They want to just take everything apart, break us all down into atomized individuals. This is what they want to do. They want to tear everything down, play people against each other, and corrode everything down to the lowest possible bit so they can rule over everything, right? The strength of one is feeble, but a union makes us strong. And so the Myanmar, the military junta moved in to try and solidify Myanmar society in response to what's been going on there. So, it's complicated, and it's and this is where, again, I urge people to have nuance, and don't assume that just because the United States is backing this insurgency, and just because the government of Myanmar is against them, that they are inherently good. I'm sure that there's a lot of people in Myanmar who have legit grievances against the military junta running the country. I'm sure of that. But at the same time, there is, there's a reason that the military junta is there, and it's there to stop the insanity brought in by the openness of the West. And that's important. That's important to keep in mind. So there you go. But anyhow, folks, I guess we'll start moving toward wrapping things up. I'll be back on tomorrow and every day if I can. I mean, I'll probably won't be on Sunday, but I'll be on Saturday. I'll be on Friday, unless events get in the way. I'm just doing this all the time. I'm just going to keep streaming. And don't feel like you have to be here for every stream. If you miss a stream, it's fine. I'll be back. I'm going to do as many streams as I can. Don't feel like you have to watch every stream I do, right? I'm streaming because I want to keep this community together. I'm streaming because I want to have connections with people, and I want to keep this community going, etc. And this is, you all are a breath of fresh air for me. So, I'm going to keep streaming all the time, and you don't have to watch all the time. So don't feel like you're obligated. I love having you here. The more people here, the better. If you want to help me, one thing you could do is start, cutting clips for me. That would be great. Cut clips, post them on your YouTube channel. Let me pull up I have my own channel now called Caleb Maupin Clips. You can help me with that. Let me pull that up here. Caleb Maupin Videos, it's called. Right. So if you want to see highlights from these streams, I can't always post the things, but Caleb Maupin videos. This is a channel where I've been posting clips because I can't post clips every day or else the channel will get screwed up. You know, the notifications will get screwed up. But go and subscribe to this other channel. And if you want to cut clips for me, if there's a thing that I said that you really like, cut the clip and send it to me. You know, please, or post it on your own channel, and I'll probably rip it from your channel and put it up on mine. I'm not going to try to get it taken down or anything. But, you know, if there's something that I say that you like, you know, or something like that, you know, by all means, cut it, clip it, and we'll put it up because, I mean, you know, that's what we're doing here. So, you know, I mean, you know, I want to make more channels because I can't put everything on this channel. If I'm going to be streaming every day, which I am right now, I can't be posting clips every day. I can't do that. Or else no one will get notifications. I just have to stream. So this is the channel that is for streaming. This is my streaming channel. I will put videos up on here every so often, but not always. And also just FYI, I might as well mention this, right? YouTube changed things. So live streams and videos are not in the same area. So a lot of people are like, how come you're not posting your streams? I am. They're just in live. You have to go to live on the channel. Videos that are uploaded go in videos. Lives go in live, right? There's two different sections on the YouTube channels now. People have been not noticing that and freaking out. Why aren't you posting your streams? I am posting my streams. I'm just posting them under live. They get uploaded under live, whereas videos go under videos. So just an important thing to keep in mind in case there's any confusion about that. All right, folks. Here we go. A new upsurge in the struggle against U.S. imperialism is now emerging throughout the world. Ever since World War II, U.S. imperialism and its followers have been continuously launching wars of aggression, but the people of various countries have been continuously waging revolutionary wars to defeat their aggression. While the danger of a new world war still exists and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today. While the danger of a new world war still exists and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today. We need a government of action to fight for working families. We need a government of action to fight for working families. We need a government of action to fight for working families. Good night, everybody.